Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm going to try to get through this. This is going to be Superman review. Spoilers ahead, certainly. But let's do a little something special for you, a moment or two, if you don't mind.
Faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings at a single bound, this amazing stranger from the planet Krypton, the Man of Steel, Superman.
You okay?
Alright, I'm going to let that continue as I kind of start this. Um, and if I could have found a different montage that had everything in it, I would have done that. But be that as it may. I do want to give a shout out and start this. This is a Superman 2025 review. It's not all these other things. I'm going to do my best not to do these kind of comparisons and stuff like that, if you don't mind. But a shout out to people. I have watched many reactions. A few of those. I'll just name a few of them. Um, so I don't know where to even start. Let's just say Film Junkie, Tyrone Magnus, Real Rejects, John Campea, Angry Joe and Company, Snarky J, Luke Pipala, perhaps. Forgive me for that. Akasan, I forget this channel's name. I think it's Comic Book Plus or something like that. Robert Meyer Burnett, Film Threat. Did I say Snarky J? Uh, Kevin Smith, Aaron Fisher, Nerdrotic, Ben Shapiro, Boba Talks, uh, Michael Knowles, Coy Jandreau, I think, or Jandreau. Um, Forgive me, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. Jeremy Johns, Chris Stuckman, and Critical Drinker, among many others, and some showing up on different shows um, and whatnot. Uh, Heroes Reforged and various other uh, uh, reviewers. Okay, so I have watched many of them. Uh, I am I am I'm steeped in it. Okay, and I've been watching from uh, theories beforehand and news as it comes out and things like that. Our movie news, which did a Road to Superman series, 100 and yeah, I know it's 100 episodes. He may have gone to another one with a spoiler review. The last one was his Superman review. So, watching a lot of stuff and watched all 100 of his videos. And we're going to do away with this again to us and just go to normal here. Let's see. Now, like I said, I'm going to try to go through this. And full spoilers. I mean, full on spoilers. I've got 4 pages, maybe actually 5 pages of notes from characters, looking them up on IMDb, trying to find characters I didn't necessarily recognize. I thought maybe they would give me a hint about, and we'll get into all of that stuff. But I basically want to start from the beginning. Maybe somebody wants to know right off. What about the movie? So let me introduce it from myself, and people that may not like it can tune out right away. But I'm a Bible believing Christian, and so therefore I could come from a criticism of anything that is in any way contrary to what I have as standard and a conviction for my own life as a Bible believing Christian. I can criticize any one of any of these movies for those things, be it from bad language or some immoral actions that are uh, taken and approved of throughout these movies. Uh, I'm talking about any of the Superman movies, comic book genre movies, and all this stuff. I'm going to spare you from all of that. I'm not going to go into all those kind of details. If you're a Christian, take the Word of God and look into it yourself and see uh, where your standard lies for those things. Um, for entertainment purposes and for it being a movie uh, from certain groups of people, there's going to be things that not going to enjoy, and therefore I'm not going to incorporate it into my life, as a Bible believing Christian. So I'm gonna, but like I said, putting that aside in a sense, not that that's uh, done. I'm just not going to mention it. It's not going to come up. Okay, so it's gone. Uh, the movie, as I said to my friends in another review, was amazing. It amazed me throughout, and I was very hopeful through the movie uh, because it was so badly done. It amazed me that such bad choices could be made, that such missed opportunities were left lying there, that there were so many things that were done so poorly. And it amazes me still that there are so many people that will praise some of these things that to me are so obviously missed opportunities and misapplied choices and different things of that nature. Um, and I was very hopeful that it would turn around at some point in the movie and that things would change, but it ended up completely disappointing me in every uh, sense of the word. Um, Now, there are some good things in the film. I'm really not going to jump into likes and dislikes at first. I want to go into the movie and just kind of through it. So, like I said, complete spoilers, probably a long video. If you haven't seen the movie yet, you know, it's your choice whether or not to stay and hear about pretty much uh, the entire movie. Uh, before we go into it, let's say there's some. I, I just go through the fact that there are characters because some will show up that I won't remember exactly where they show up and jump on screen. You got Superman, Clark Kent, played by David Cornsweet, which is Dollar General Henry Cavill, uh, discount Henry Cavill. And everybody knows if you put a side by side of Henry Cavill and uh, David Cornsweet, you see the resemblances, but you can see the differences as well. And it's not that David Cornsweet looks all that younger or anything of that nature. It's just simply a slight difference. Um, but you can do that on your own, and you can compare body sizes and figure looks, build, and all of that. You're welcome to do that all by yourself. Okay, and see the differences. Uh, I'm going to move on from it for now. Uh, then you have, of course, Lois Lane. Lois Lane. You got Jimmy Olsen and Lex Luthor, uh, played by the very excellent actor Nicholas Hoult. I think he does a very good job in a number of movies that I've seen him in. Uh, I don't necessarily enjoy this Lex Luthor portrayal here for a few different reasons. Of course, Eve Tessmacher. Uh, then you have the engineer, uh, not Angela, I think was her name in the movie, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, and then Ultraman, who of course also is played by stunt double, whatever, but David Cornsweet. Uh, Again, spoilers everywhere. Jor-El and Lara show up very shortly. Bradley Cooper. Love Bradley Cooper in a lot of what he does. Not necessarily everything, but and he doesn't necessarily do a bad job. He probably just does the job he was called upon to do. And I don't know whether or not he even knows what he said because he was speaking completely in Kryptonian. So maybe he just learned the lines and said them. Who knows? You know. Sidney Happerson uh, was played by what is his name? Blackheart, something like that. One of James Gunn's friends. We got Neva Howell and Pruitt Taylor Vince, which was Ma and Pa Kent. Uh, the Sidney Happerson before you miss it. This is the guy with the big mustache throughout the movie and glasses and saying you need to close the portal and stuff like that at certain points. Let's go on. Of course, there is Mr. Terrific, Guy Gardner, and Hawk Girl. And very briefly, Sean Gunn shows up as just lost the name. Um, the man that is funding the Justice Gang in this movie, JG. But to be the Justice League, I assume. They're building the Hall of Justice and revamping the inside of whatever it is. Uh, I guess there can be different interpretations to that too, so I'm not sure exactly where they're at with it. um, Perry White is in this, Stephen Lombard and Kat Grant, played by Michaela Hoover. Perry White's, oh man, played by a very uh, good actor, and I'm forgetting his name now. It was in Suits and has been in other uh, movies as well and TV shows. But yeah, his name is evading me right now. Let's see here. There's a character played by Terrence Rosemore who is called Otis Berg. Otis Berg is the name on IMDb. Okay. Now, Otis Berg, of course, calls back to Superman, 1978, uh, which is written down on um, the map. And Otis says, I'll wipe it off. Uh, mm, so it's a callback to that. That is Otis. Of course, in this movie, he's a black man. Um, uh, and I'm just pointing it out so that if you didn't notice who he was in the movie, just one time, I think his name is mentioned is Lex Luthor saying, it says his name. I don't know if he says any other, I don't think he says any other word. Uh, but he's telling Otis to drop the ship off of the building at that moment. Okay. You got Metamorpho also and Mr. Handsome in this movie. Rick Flag Sr. Michael Rosenbaum is one of uh, the Raptor guards at some point. Now, I missed actually seeing him because he's probably just covered in a helmet, so I didn't notice which one he was. So, forgive me. Uh, then we have, let's see, I think this is Vasil Gurkos. I believe was played by Zalto Burke, and he's the leader of the country of Bravia. Of course, Jake Tapper shows up on the screen among other news people, and Will Reeve, the son of Christopher Reeve, late great Christopher Reeve, and has a good moment where he's explaining the Justice League over the screen. He, of course, shows up in a couple other imageries. Uh, and let's see, don't want to forget Gary, played by Alan Tudyk. And See who I'm missing, because I left out some that I was thinking of. And there are probably all number of cameos and things that show up otherwise. But it should be good enough. Huge number of characters that lots of people would like to have seen them get more um, screen time, more fleshing out of their characters and stuff like that. I'm going to try my best to look properly into the camera, though. But the movie is going to start out uh, and check other people out for other mentions of things that they saw and was perhaps interesting to them, please. But it starts out with what you could call a crawl to introduce you into the world. Okay, 300 uh, years ago, a lot of threes used. So 300 years ago, metahumans, became known, and gods and monsters is the era we live in, right? So just set it up. We already know about these people, whether they're aliens, uh, metahumans, you know, mutated humans, or whatever they may be. 300 years they've been around. For 3 decades, uh, or 3 decades ago, so Superman then, uh, was launched off from Krypton to Earth. And so he's 30 years old now. 3 years ago, he introduced himself to the world as the most powerful uh, metahuman. Okay. And then 3 weeks ago, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it says 3 weeks ago, he stopped the invasion of Boravia into Jarhanpur. And 3 hours ago, he no the so-called Hammer of Boravia showed up, calling out Superman to fight him and beat up Superman. 3 minutes ago, he lost his first fight ever, and then there's the impact of him hitting the snow. All right, so that's the crawl is over Antarctica. Now, how I feel about the crawl, it doesn't bother me. Okay, the crawl itself is intended to just put us into a world and give us some explanation. I'm good with that. The kind of thing that maybe Star Wars does and stuff like that. I believe Man of Steel, not Man of Steel, sorry, old movie called Masters of the Universe. Um, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that starts out with a sort of little explanation. It's been a little while since I watched the movie, but it starts out with a little explanation and then just throws you into, well, title credits and then the movie. So movies do these things in different ways. But the crawl was first. Superman lands in the snow, and you've probably all seen the extended scene, which is essentially how the movie starts out, without giving you the crawl information. Um, like I said, I don't have a problem with the crawl or the crawl's information or that kind of thing, but it's setting up where we're at with Superman. And he goes into the Fortress of Solitude. Crypto shows up and jumps all over him. It's a controversial scene. It was a choice, okay? And it could have been toned down. I don't think it ever actually was, or if it was toned down very slightly, and it could have been brought back a bit. The first trailer, or teaser trailer for Superman, where it shows Crypto jump up close to Superman, okay, and then to drag him away. Left intact the seriousness of the situation. See, when you show Kryptos and they're jumping on Superman 5 or 6 times, and Superman crying out because of it, it makes you think that the 14 bones and the damage to the intestines, kidneys, and spleen, and whatever else was going on, his lungs and all that, was partly done by crypto, and that you shouldn't have that thought later on. Okay, if he jumped and landed on him one time, heard the yelp, and then came around confused that such a thing came out of Superman's mouth, you know, a a holler, if you will, of pain, then that would have made more sense to a number of moviegoers and would not have been as funny. Okay, so the choice was to play it for laughs. That's the choice. Okay, for better or worse. So when you get the criticism that it's played for laughs and it takes away from the seriousness, and I think he broke a couple of bones possibly and stuff like that, you got to live with that. You can't tell me that my criticism is invalid. So we'll start with that. Um, Now Jor-El and Lara's message is plain as he comes into the fortress. And there's a few questions for you. Crypto pulls up to the door with Superman. The door does not open. The door is, it's just there. Uh, the of course the fortress comes out of the ice, and very neat shots. A lot of that. But the question that I have is, not too long later on, we're going to find out that Lex Luthor comes up to the Fortress of Solitude from a much further distance away, and the doors just open all on their own. Nobody says anything to it. No dog barks at it. Nothing. Okay? Again, the same thing. Fortress comes out of the ice. They walk up to the front door, and it is opened for them before they walk in. Well, think about it. You know what I'm saying? Uh, it's an inconsistency. What's the deal? But say what you want. Maybe that makes sense to some people. Um, but the first thing I noticed about Superman when he's laying there in the snow is there's no damage to the suit. His suit is more indestructible than he himself. It's a very amazing thing. That's an amazing choice. I was very hopeful the entire time that the movie had not come out, that the filmmakers had seen this and seen the idea of it didn't make much sense, and that tearing up the suit would make a lot of sense. Okay? Making rips in the costume in various places. He could replace it anytime he wants to. I'm sure that he's got more than one suit that he can wear. But he doesn't change it. Nothing happens there. No difference is made. Be that as may. All right. So there's disappointment. You can try to track my disappointments if you like, but you'll see throughout this it's just how it just builds, and the building of it then is what makes me ultimately dislike the movie as a whole. Okay, there are things in the movie that I like, but it will not save the movie from being disliked. Uh, all right. So anyway, they are healing him. The robots, of course, exist in the and Superman robots. The term Superman robots. You're welcome to show me in the comic books, but I do not believe that it's in there. All right, and the people that have tried to show it have then looked up the places that they've pointed to, All Star Superman, for instance, and said, "Oh, he just calls them robots." And uh, the iteration that I grew up with in the comics, basically that I kind of formulated where I take Superman from. Generally speaking, not a firm. I'm gonna be clear about this. This is not a firm thing where I say anything outside of this presentation of Superman is therefore wrong because this is my build. All right, but I take for essentially the foundation, the grounding of Superman, the presentation of his character and the world around him to be from John Byrne's run in the later 80s, post Crisis, when he reinvented Superman in the Man of Steel series and then continued for a couple of years in the comic books. And I just recently read through the 4 volumes hardcover that DC had put out about that, and enjoyed it. And again, there are things in it that I would disagree with and dislike from certain perspectives, and would say, "Oh, this could be corrected," and even a little bit, a couple inconsistencies. But those things, I can understand. Okay, but anyway, Superman robots is not in the comics. The term Superman robots, just call them robots. He could have done that. Uh, but it was a choice. Again, it's a choice. Uh, just like the suit was a choice. And I do not like the suit. Did not improve in me my opinion of it. There's a couple of shots where it seems adequate. It looks okay. There's a few shots, and a very few in the whole movie that to me look like a good shot of Superman um, doing his thing or making a pose or whatever it is, and the suit looks better than it does at most other places in the movie. Um, so moving forward from there, where are we at? Talking about in the Fortress of Solitude, he's getting healed by magnification of the rays of the sun. They're in Antarctica, by the way, and every other portrayal of Fortress of Solitude is north in the Arctic Circle. Okay, so be that as it may, and whether or not you like it that way, preferably in the Antarctic, it's. I think that it's more used for a plot device because of the treaties in Antarctica, international treaties, and claiming it's a violation, and therefore the government ought to be upset with Superman for having a base in the Antarctic. Okay, you know, I think that that's just a plot device, and I could live with it. But I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't think that it should have been, you know, altered that way. I don't. I don't think it should have been done that way. But again, it's a choice, and my preference to criticize that. Now, John Byrne's run didn't have the Fortress of Solitude. Okay, so it doesn't really make a difference, in that. I'm not claiming that there shouldn't be a Fortress of Solitude. I grew up also with Superman from Christopher Reeve and the movies following, and of course, the fortress existed there, and Smallville, which also had the fortress as well. Uh, all north, by the way. Just throwing some stuff out there. All right, so going on though, Crypto, of course, is there at the fortress, and he's destroyed part of the fortress. There's some humor that's thrown in there. Um, some jokes are. Yeah, I don't want to necessarily say a bunch of jokes. So you've seen a lot of these things revealed as well if you're watching online. The different reveals of stuff, little clips that are put out, and things like that. So I don't have to repeat everything. Alan Tudyk is usually somewhat humorous, so therefore he has a few lines in the movie that are humorous. I understand, and I'm not critical of the banter there of the one robot versus another robot. Um, him saying that there are no feelings, and then others giggling and so forth. It None of that bothers me. It's perfectly fine. I get humor. All right. Um, but he's healed to robot number 4, Gary, at the end of the movie, uh, to 83%. He says 83% restored to health and needs to rest. And to me, he doesn't learn anything in this. He says he's got to get back to the fray. Now, it does go to a cool looking flying scene and stuff like that after this moment with crypto and all that. And he's got to get back to Metropolis, and where the Hammer of Bravia has just defeated him, knocked him down quite a peg. Maybe we could figure out what percentage he was knocked down to the 83%, restored to health. Because he doesn't have any kind of kryptonite poisoning at this point. It's just what? What is the 17% that needs to be healed beyond that? Surely they just picked a number. There may not be any reckoning of that idea. And that, again, that's not necessarily the bad part. This introduces this moment here of leaving the fortress to me, is introducing and continues on in this to show that we're getting a very dumb Superman, a very stupid Superman. Now, he's portrayed as intelligent in the comic books, quite intelligent. What level of intelligence or who he's under and stuff like that is not the question I'm trying to get to in this, but he has a very fast acting mind. He can make many calculations and in very short number of seconds and so forth. So you know if I mention all of it, it's just like it compounds the dumbness. But he leaves the fortress and flying across a barren, white, snowy wasteland. And there is a black figure. This is a character that's dressed all in shiny black. Okay? In black, who is traipsing along in that barren white wasteland. And he's not flying far from the surface of Antarctica. And he doesn't see her. This is the engineer is walking across Antarctica. Was sent there to try to find the fortress. Where does he go when this happens? And she is walking straight toward the fortress. He flies straight over her and doesn't see her. Please, come on. I've read enough Superman. This is not Superman. He misses her completely. He misses somebody walking around out in the snow that's dressed all black. Now, if she was dressed in white, well, okay. Yeah, that would make sense. There's camouflage to that. Maybe she could have just camouflaged herself with her nanite technology that they introduced. They can become anything. Okay, well then make her look like a bear or something, or a penguin, or whatever. Come on, it doesn't look right. It doesn't make sense. And so she can say, "Oh, Superman's coming back to you." Talking to Lex over the intercoms, which is going all the way to Antarctica without any kind of problem whatsoever. Think about it. But yeah, so I'm just saying, it doesn't make sense. Okay, he is letting her know where he's at. Now, if if he had flown off and it was off to an angle, not over the top of her head, maybe. Like, okay, didn't notice her then. Or, flew the other direction and it just made the sound, and she saw him like departure, and then could see the fortress, in front of her, in some angle right off from it, going the opposite direction. Oh yeah, no problem whatsoever. That all makes sense. You know, that would make sense that he didn't see her, but to fly right over her, it's like, wow, Superman, you're really stupid. You're out here in the middle of nowhere, and there's somebody out in the middle of nowhere, and you just blew right by. Okay, whatever. Um, but yeah, it's played off. Well, it's not even played off. It's just you're gonna accept this, and that's the thing. I'm all for suspension of disbelief in movies to be able to accept and have fun with a movie. That's why you shouldn't necessarily take some movies too seriously that are all, geared toward entertainment. You're supposed to be suspending your disbelief to accept what this movie is saying to you. So if you really make political issues out of some things that are just entertainment, um, you're messing up, and you know it's going to impact your life. But yeah, let's keep going on here. There's a lot of speaking going on by that Hammer Baravia when he comes back into Metropolis. Well, when the Shock comes back to Metropolis, lots of speaking, and speaking in a Baravian accent. Now, very quickly in the next scene, the leader of Baravia there, that Gurkos, is going to deny any connection with the Hammer, which really didn't make sense. Why in the world would you do such a thing? It seems like it could have easily. Now, I assume, yes, that, oh, you're attacking a city uh, in America, so therefore you want to distance yourself from that idea. Maybe, maybe so. Maybe just call it retaliation, uh, and that the government needs to get Superman under control or something like that. There's other ways it could have been played out. The Hammer of Baravia character is going to be revealed immediately after this as Ultraman, and he is speaking, like I said, throughout this first part of the scene, and then Superman's coming back, flies into the frame basically, to the fray basically, and Lex Luthor announces to the Hammer that so that that they have a connection there, that he's there, gives him a direction, and huh, the Hammer of Bravia responds verbally. After this, and after the reveal that it is Ultraman, he becomes a mute. He is unable to speak and can only scream a couple of times later on in the film. Does not say a word. Now, I think that's a big missed opportunity, huge missed opportunity. The Hammer of Bravia could have been any kind of guy in a suit, right? And could have been played a lot of different ways. When I first saw it, the reveal of this character in this big mechanic suit, not in the movie, but in previews and however they did it in the marketing, it occurred to me, like, immediately, like, this could be Lex Luthor's armor, and he has his squad that he calls the Raptors. That it was a perfect opportunity to introduce that part of uh, that we have not yet seen, that I have been uh, excitedly anticipating. I'm uh, fairly sure we would have gotten it had at some point had um, the other version of Superman continued um, many years ago. Should have continued in 2014. Uh, Actually, immediately after Man of Steel came out, they should have been saying sequel is in the works. We are getting it ready for you. Not that it should have been immediately Lex Luthor. I'm just saying at some point in the series of movies that should have followed, and still could follow really, but the series of movies that should have followed, I think we could have had the Lex Luthor outfit, and this was a perfect, beautiful time that could have shown. Yes, he could have been in that suit. Okay, um, now why wasn't it? Who knows? This is James Gunn's world. Why was it Ultraman? Who knows? This is James Gunn's world. It could have played out as a Baravian, just a Baravian asset that Lex Luthor gave. It could have been the beginnings of the Lex Luthor outfit. It could still be that, really, but it could have been the beginnings of it that was part of the um, weaponry given to Baravia to fight their battle. Okay, so it could have played out that way. It turns away from that at the very beginning of the movie, and the Hammer of Baravia disappears entirely, completely. It's not brought back. The suit is gone after the first scene. But Superman comes back to fight with this man that just beat him up a few minutes before. I don't know, maybe a couple hours before even. Depends how long the healing takes, right? But we'll just say a few minutes before because it didn't look like it was necessarily that long, and still had time to that he could have been healing. And sure, he was healing on the way back as well. Um, but there's just some inconsistency, a lot of inconsistency that just build up right there. And why is he fighting the Hammer of Bravia? And he's fighting the Hammer of Bravia and absolutely losing everything. That I'm fine that Lex Luthor found a way to fight back. A lot of fight commands he can give. The way that I understood the scene playing out was he was giving commands, and there was a whole team of operators that were speaking the command uh, to this character, the Hammer of Baravia, and on screen, typing it in and stuff like that. Now, whether that showed up on his screen so that he could see it, or he knew the commands, so they were voice commands, and some people would suggest that to me later that it was something in the mind for a type of mind control or computer chip. He's Elon Musk dreams and stuff like that that you know made this character easily controlled. Well, this it didn't play as the control of the physical body in that way. It played more as he's been trained, and he's later on he calls him stupider than Superman, which again announces to me this is a stupid Superman. If Lex Luthor appears to be right about most of what he says in this film, so therefore, here we go. We're getting we're a few minutes into this movie. We're getting way into the video time. So I want to try to speed it up and hurry along, but oh my goodness, I am certainly trying to go through it piece by piece. But it had me asking why. I mean, why? If my analogy would be a boxing match with two boxers, and they're both trained, and they're both at least they should learn the best they can from fight tapes and stuff like that. Yeah, he has a twitch, and he'll spin his right hand around a couple times and then pull a left on you and stuff like that. Okay, fine. And your trainer's calling out to you, duck, dodge, left, right, whatever. Keep your hands up. The boxer that learns the other fighter's move doesn't always get the hit in though, and isn't always capable of avoiding some kind of strike. And that's the way it was portrayed. Was that even with Ultraman being claimed to be stronger than Superman, more powerful, or whatever the wording was used, it just it doesn't play right to me ultimately. And I'll give you this: you watch it one time, you might be like, and you get beat up. Oh, it's terrible, and you don't spend much time thinking about it because of uh, playing an ADHD situation. You're cutting from one thing and jumping to the next thing. Then sure, I mean, you just give it up. Yeah, okay, sure, that happened. He grabbed him, spun him around, punched him out, flipped him upside down, hit him in the back of the head, gets him disoriented again, then spins him around and throws him into the ground. So much so that Superman can't even take off, can't get out of the hole without some help. Uh, there's. I understand there are people like, oh well, you gotta just buy it. There's a point where it becomes incredulous though, and I don't buy it. I can't suspend that much disbelief, or I can't think of Superman being that stupid or that weak. A weaker Superman, no problem with that. John Byrne's Superman was weaker than other incarnations of Superman. Got no problem with believing in a weaker Superman, okay? And there's a lot of explanations for different things as far as Superman and his powers through the years of comic books. So, again, I don't have a problem suspending disbelief, but you got to take it to a point and you have to be somewhat reasonable. It's also possible that, parts of this movie were cut and trimmed down from a longer 2.5 hour or 3 hour version of the film. Hey, release the gun cut. I'll watch it and see how much worse it could be or how much better it could be. Or maybe it improves it all. Maybe it's a Batman v Superman situation where the things were cut out. I'm buying into them, and other people aren't. All right, and when you get the Ultimate Edition, it'll play differently. Hey, I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful for it. But you can't just tell me something's hopeful and not show some hopefulness and then expect me to say, oh, yeah, it's just hopeful. Uh, you can't just do it in a brief, momentary second, is what I'm trying to tell you. Okay? Call back to other criticisms, I guess. Now, this is going to show a lot of that interaction um, with Lex Luthor's crew, okay? And there's a whole lot that can be said about Lex Luthor's crew as well. Just a whole bunch of different things that happen, that are said, that are commented on, and stuff like that. But I don't know. It plays too far into um, absolutely overpowering Superman. It didn't have to be there. It is ultimately the point that there could have been a speech a little bit, and then the Hammer of Bravia fly away and be, done with the Hammer of Bravia for that moment, and he comes back later on sometime in the film. It would have to be rewritten to do it that way. But we'll leave it at that. Okay? Let's see. Now it cuts from there to the Daily Planet. Clark Kent walking up to the Daily Planet, right? And introducing you to this character. He's going to be there for a few minutes and go away, and then you get a half version of Clark Kent, and then he's gone. Or you can say he comes back as far as just in plain clothes, right? But again, like the Hammer of Bravia, he gets this scene in costume, his Daily Planet outfit uniform, suit of clothes, and then of course he'll be in Lois's apartment shortly after this, and there's a scene in between, and then Clark is gone. No more Clark Kent. He is Superman throughout the rest of the movie. And again, plain clothes at Mom and Pa Kent's house. So he's out of the Superman uniform for a few moments. But other than that, he's not wearing the glasses or anything like that. And I'm not going to talk about that here. But yeah, he's at the Daily Planet. There's some banter between him and Lois. He talks about the Baravian fake accent briefly. And so there's a lot of dialogue that happens, and this is where marketing comes in. And marketing did a lot of this, where it either did a different take of a scene, and they do that a lot. Like Steve Lombard says, "Hey loser," to Clark Kent, and Clark Kent responds in the commercials, "You're the loser." He doesn't say that in the movie. He says, "Hey Steve," and he's carrying around his article, the Daily Planet, where he's on the front page, and he's showing it to everybody as he walks by, and show it to a couple people, you know, would is perfectly fine. That he showed it to everybody. He looked at the person reading the newspaper, the guard out front, and looks at the newspaper specifically, and they zoom in on his name and the article and all that. So that's how they play that. Is he is showing the article, and he keeps referring to his article uh, by the showing of it, and then a few times as he's talking with Lois and Jimmy. Okay, and a little bit of overkill, just a little bit. It's you got to understand. There's a saturation point. Okay, as it's been pointed out before, Thor, Love, and Thunder have those goats, and funny that there's screaming goats a couple of times. It loses its funniness because and becomes extremely annoying at the saturation point. Now, this isn't so bad. It just is there. Uh, did I not tell you? I have watched this movie 4.5 times. Half time because I was tired one time and fell asleep through a lot of it. So forgive me, but yeah, I have watched this movie, 4.5 times so far, and we'll watch it again. And if there is a director's cut released, I will watch that one probably a couple of times also to try to really grasp different things. Because there are a couple of ways you can play a movie and tell it better where it doesn't have to be told that way and it can be cut down. That's been going on for the longest time in cinema. Um, but sometimes the longer form is more necessary. But moving on. Okay, at the Daily Planet, I didn't dislike the scene of the Daily Planet. Don't care for the uh, hairdo, if you will, that's on Clark Kent's head. Um, so I think that it could have been done differently, but it doesn't take me completely out of the movie. And um, anyway, there's certain shots that are less annoying than others, having to do with the haircut. But anyway, not going to go too far into that. Not a lot to really say there. Now it cuts away from the Daily Planet scene into a meeting with the heads of state. I believe it's the best way to say that. Uh, hmm, so, not to say a whole lot about it. It's just Lex Luthor in doing a sales pitch, showing his I forget what you call it, the sizzle reel, I guess is what you would call it, and of his stuff for Planet Watch, and uh, I fully expected James Gunn to be in that picture with the Planet Watch there at that moment, but you know what I'm talking about if you know what I'm talking about. All right, but anyway, he's got the sales pitch. He talks about the different things and says, we want to bring Superman in. So he's trying to convince them, obviously, and is going to continue on with the Fortress invasion after he's going to leave for that when the apartment scene happens. So this is all going on in a timely fashion while the Daily Planet stuff is going on. That stuff is going on. Uh, with this meeting with the heads of state, the sales pitch. Um, so they leave in a certain way. I'm not going to get too much into it. Just the suitcase going up onto the table. I don't see anything being put into the suitcase or any object that would have been put into the suitcase, and the suitcase was already closed, but then it closes it and locks it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Uh, if the scene had played, maybe this was another shot of the scene was that he picks up a folder and throws it in there and closes it. I can interpret it that way, but it wasn't shown that way, so it's weird. Okay, and it cuts straight to the lock on Lois's apartment, uh, opening up, so she's coming home, and then closes the door. Here's Clark Kent in the other room. Doesn't know who it is. Grabs a bat. Walks up to him. What are you doing here? Cooking you breakfast for dinner. What a very thoughtful man. And they have a banter and they have a little thing that goes on, and it's interesting to me that people really praise the um, the chemistry of these two. I'm okay with it. I don't have any problem with it. But I'm not gonna say that it's it's the greatest thing or that it's the best version and so forth. Okay. Um, it's just I'm just not gonna go that direction. It's perfectly fine and it works. So I'm good with it. But I'm pretty much uh, I believe the chemistry between most of the Lois and Clarks uh, is good in most iterations. So I don't. Anyway, it's almost spoken of as if this is the greatest thing ever, and if I if I wanted to, I could have some criticism toward that, but like I said, I didn't have a problem with it. It's more or less the overstatement of it from some people. Oh, this is so great that makes me want to say, why do you think it's just so great? It's adequate and it works. It's good. So I don't want to criticize it because I don't want you to think that I thought while watching the movie, well, this doesn't work because it's terrible. It's perfectly fine. Um, anyway, moving on. They do the interview, and again, when he leaves the interview, there's no more Clark. Superman using foul language is not a good look. Okay, and they avoid it in various other parts of the movie, but they allow it in a couple of places here. This and then later when he's arrested. Not when he's arrested, when he's going into the pocket dimension. We'll talk about that in a moment. But in the meanwhile, in the meanwhile, uh, down goes the crew of Lex Luthor, Ultraman, and the engineer, along with Eve Tessmacher, into the Fortress of Solitude. And again, nothing said, nothing to open the door, no hand movements involved, nothing like that. Of course, it would give away that Ultraman's a clone, which was it's the worst kept secret. What is the right wording for that? There's a phrase for it. It's like this is obvious, and but gotta suspend our disbelief for it. Okay. Uh, the interview scene before I get to the Fortress of Solitude issues, I didn't have a lot of problems with the interview. There was a lot of speaking over each other, where I've seen it 4.5 times, and I still don't know everything that was said. I still haven't caught every word that was said by each of them. Because when two people are talking at the same time, excuse me, Fox News, we can't hear either one of those people, okay? We can try to focus in on what one person is saying, but it really doesn't work. It does not make sense to have that kind of dialogue, talking over each other at the same time. I my criticism of that is the frustration and anger of Clark Kent or Superman, his character, getting upset and yelling and shouting. People were going to die. I get that. You can say it a different way. It could be said a different way. This Superman's uh, the portrayal of Superman and Clark Kent, but mainly Superman, is is done in a way that's not necessarily good. Okay, there's the line delivery in some places is a choice, but I think it was the wrong choice slightly. And this is one of those cases where he doesn't have to be yelling and screaming. He could have done it a different way. Um, but yeah, and but we're going to move on from that. I didn't have a huge problem with it. It did a lot of introductions or a lot of character building, to show you who these characters are, and that is what it needed. And I'm going to come back to that idea in just a moment. All right, into the Fortress of Solitude, we of course follow Lex Luthor and crew, as I already mentioned. Now, there's a cutaway scene in this where he says that Superman's not going to interrupt them because a distraction was created. So this is, again, somewhat sequential, but um, that is, it cuts to a van, which is the scene opening when in that the the trailer that's pretty much starts with the interview um, with Clark and Lois. Starts on a cityscape first, and that cityscape, there's a van. I don't know if the van is in the trailer because I didn't go back to double check it, but there's a van. That's the scene where that actually is in the movie. There's a van with Otis Berg and Sidney Happerson. Uh, Lost my character page. There it is. Sidney Happerson. Um, where they're releasing the little baby kaiju into the city metropolis. Uh, Again, that's the scenery. Uh, Across a lake or a river or whatever it is. And he spits a little ball of fire and he's running off with a little crazy baby. Okay, you know, I get it. And after the scene in the fortress. And the scene in the fortress is uh, the robots reacting to an invader, and so this is a restricted area, uh, asking them to leave, but they're completely overpowered by the engineer and Ultraman. Ultraman flies up and uh, rips number four, Gary, in pieces, and and proceeds to destroy another robot later on. That's the way I perceive it anyway. And the engineer takes care of approximately uh, 14 robots. I may be slightly off on that number, but something close to that. With blades, yeah, circular saw blades, basically out of her hands. Now, some of that is overkill. Okay, so, some of it, not that she's destroying all of them. Although you did have Ultraman, you could have played it between the two of them, destroying them kind of equally, but they didn't. Showing off her powers, maybe. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with that. I'm not okay that it's with parts of Lex Luthor just walking through the chaos. Okay, yeah, I know he's trying to play it as if he's really amazing and everything. It just really, to me, plays as there's nothing going on around him. Okay, that he doesn't get hit by any flying debris at all. Doesn't flinch from a blade flying within 2 inches of his face or so. Uh, and again, a robot being cut in half right beside him, and you know, splitting. Therefore, doesn't run into him at all. No wind to blow the collar of his jacket. Nothing. I mean, that's where it's overkill. Is there's at least a couple of places where he should have flinched, or the CGI debris and everything around him should have been a little bit further away from him. Okay? He's not Superman or Ultraman to not flinch at something flying by. Okay? It just it was just too much. Um, to me. And some other person might say it wasn't too much. At least they didn't do it a couple more times. Then I would have gotten very irritated. But it got just to the point where I was like, nah, I don't think that would really happen. That doesn't. It's unbelievable. It's too far unbelievable. Just slightly too far unbelievable. Okay. But again, my thought. Okay. Now, of course, they are at that moment. They're discovering the message and recovering the message. Okay. The new message of uh, Lara and Jor-El. Now, they're in the midst of that, and it cuts away to this distraction of the kaiju fight. The kaiju fight starts out with a dog barking. Another dog. Not the same dog. We don't have Crypto. Oh, yeah, Crypto was there at the fortress and has been kidnapped, being tortured, um, if you will. Yeah, it's not a good look. Maybe maybe a little bit more fighting back. But of course, we're cutting this movie very short. Anyway, new dog is barking at the kaiju. The kaiju's foot is about to come down on the dog. I don't know if it was malicious or not. I think it was just in the way. Superman saves the dog. Good. Saves the dog and blows him out of the way. It's all good. The dog hits a tree. And I heard it from other commentators like, why did you make him hit the tree? Yep. You went and took it a little too far there. Uh, but anyway, saves the dog, gets crushed underfoot. It becomes Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny crawling through the ground with a little girl within that circle 20 feet from the foot of that kaiju. Uh, It's very odd, very Looney Tunesy. Okay, this is just one instance of Looney Tunes, and yeah, not gonna get into that part. But there's a kaiju fight that goes on. He busts out of the ground, of course. Little girl cheers him on. Uh, now he crawled all the way out of the circle and into the street and messed up the block for 20 feet before he flew out of that circle. Uh, the ground, I mean. Uh, by the way, throwing debris up around him to people that are standing by. Goodness, guys, come on. No injuries. Oh, the news are very careful to report. Oh, there's no injuries that happen because of the actions of these heroes. Um, this thing grew from like 7 feet inside of a Jitters coffee shop to then towering hmm, 15, 20 stories up. Probably something like that. Blasting his fire breath into a window where people were standing there idly by. The Superman, trying to block the flames and charring his suit in the meanwhile. Uh, and they didn't think to leave before that or to get in the back of the room or oh no, they're all standing by the window probably because that's just what we do here. Uh, very unusual choices in all the people still standing around and being close by. And I'm not. You watch it yourself, okay? The kaiju's tail at one point sweeps up about 15 cars, and there are people that are in the streets and nearby that seemingly don't get hurt from this. It's almost unbelievable. Superman does save a squirrel though, and saves another woman. Puts her up on top of the roof. Uh, I assume he checked to make sure that the door was unlocked so that she could climb down, door or whatever access to the roof that there was, so that she could get back down. Uh, and there's little interactions. They're meant to be meaningful for the character that Superman saves lives and stuff. A squirrel, yeah, squirrel. But I'm telling you, if you watch it, here's the thing. It's a sad thing when disasters happen and people get hurt. Okay, it's sad, and the fact of the matter is that's going to happen, and we know that it happens. Okay, um, I wouldn't argue with somebody that wants to say, well, Superman's going to save everybody, so therefore we can't have this happen. Well, then you have to have a smarter populace as well, because he can't save everybody if they're all standing around trying to get pictures and selfies taken with the kaiju and stuff like that. It just won't work that way. All right, I didn't mention the selfie earlier with Eve Tessmacher, taking a picture of herself outside the window is the Hammer Bravia. That was that earlier scene. Uh, but throughout, she's doing selfies, and that's going to become a plot device again. Uh, Maybe you call it a MacGuffin at that point, where she's taking all the pictures that they need to take care of the situation. But that's later on. And again, spoilers, so we'll probably talk about that later. But kaiju fight, it goes on for a while. There's some neat little things about the kaiju fire breathing, flying scenes and stuff like that. I would like somebody to tell me about the kaiju kind of monster scenes. Somebody said either Rebirth or New 52 or something had a kaiju in it, or he was fighting monsters of some sort or something like that. That Superman was doing this. I don't know. I haven't gone to those things. Now, again, if I come from John Burns, there was a an ape that was Titano, I think was his name. I'm not totally sure, but he was being manipulated by scientists and grown, and he was confused, a scared ape, and angry with the people that were abusing him and stuff like that, which all made sense, and was fighting Superman and growing. He's getting bigger. And that could have been thrown in here instead, and that sort of a story, instead of a kaiju. Which again, where's the kaiju come from? What are we doing? Uh, there's no explanation for that from the movie. Uh, there's seemingly no investigation that follows in the movie. The Justice Gang are sitting around reading news stories and whatever else. Who knows? Uh, Not sure what all Mr. Terrific's in. Maybe he's doing all the research. Maybe he's trying to find out where the kaiju came from. But anyway, the Justice Gang does show up during this fight. There are neat shots of flying sequence. Um, this is one of the scenes of Hawk Girl showing up and flying with her mace. Uh, so I'm trying to remember from the comic books whether or not she's carrying the mace or it's just Hawkman. Uh, but Hawkman and Hawkgirl, by the way, have different headgear. So this looks more like Hawkgirl's headgear, even though it does look a little odd because it is, corporate sponsored superhero stuff. Um, and probably the most annoying thing about Hawkgirl, really, she doesn't have a whole lot to do. There's not a lot that she does do in the film or say. She does have some lines. I'm not saying she doesn't say anything, but the screaming while flying, while I think I understand it, Hawk Girl, so she's got the hawk sound. That's the most annoying thing. Um, Perhaps because it just goes on too long. Um, and perhaps because I don't remember comic books portraying uh, her as doing that. Okay, so her or the Hawkman. Uh, so that's neither here nor there necessarily, but there are the most probably criticized character I've seen from most of these um, reviews has been a dislike toward Hawk Girl, and um, I'd rather give her due and let her come back and be fleshed out by some other writer, some other director, and all that, and let it all play out properly somehow. You know, and she did what she could, maybe, and I don't know, uh, but I can see where the criticism comes from, and could partially agree with it, but wouldn't want to dismiss her too quickly. So, going on. And so, while the message is being recovered and the fight is going on and all that, the Justice League has showed up. The Justice League has no regard for the life of this kaiju at all. So the kaiju is fairly quickly dispatched with by uh, Mr. Terrific, who blows up his stomach, basically. And so the kaiju falls down. Superman catches the kaiju to lay it down gently, crawls out from underneath. Kaiju steaks is the joke. And a little banter of Superman trying to say we could have kept it alive, we could have been less cruel, etc. And there's some just dismissive kind of bad jokes that don't really land there. Um, Now, hmm, I did say in the meanwhile, sort of, but I think the message is more or less recovered during the night. And the kaiju fight is going on while Lex Luthor is getting the news to interview him and try to get this new message out. And the message is that the Kryptonian message, though we've heard the first half at the beginning of it, how his parents love him and sent him away from a dying planet to uh, Earth where he could do the most good. And then the rest of the message was lost to fulfill the Kryptonian dream. Okay, that's kind of where it ends. And then the rest of the message is recovered and by the engineer, not created but recovered. And the message goes on to say that the people of weak or the people of Earth rather are um, confused and weak. That they're uh, hmm, it's degrading to the people of Earth. Okay, very much so, very insulting, and this is a very new direction to take the message from the parents. Okay, ultimately the message is from Jor-El in both of the previous iterations. That is Superman 1978 and Superman 2 to uh, and you could say Superman Returns and the other iterations of the Christopher Reeve, wherever Terrell shows up and gives some information, or his mother in Superman 4, for instance. But yeah, the 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 direction taken is now different. That humans are not all that great. That they're weak, they're confused, they should be easily manipulated. But uh, says anybody that um, tries to stop you, basically, and I'm not remembering precisely the words, unfortunately. Dispatch with those people, just kill them, and take a harem full of wives, take as many wives as you can, and have children to uh, repopulate the earth. So, uh, somewhat holding the sentiments of Jor-El, not Jor-El, uh, say Zod, or perhaps some other person on Krypton in some other way, because there have been versions where the Kryptonians all escaped, and then some Kryptonians, decide to take over the planet Earth and stuff like that. There's Zod, and in the Man of Steel version, is trying to repopulate the Earth with Kryptonians and change the Earth, obviously. But he's going to do it a different way, the codex with the DNA of them, and he's not going to mix with the people of Earth. Um, so yeah, like I said, this is a completely new take, never shown before in the comics in any other way but a nightmare scenario, but certainly not from Jor-El. This is a different thing. It does not play for me. Okay, so if it had been ambiguous and said, well, this is the message, here it is, he's trying to take over the world, and so forth, then where people were asking the question, is this real? Is this fake? Is this not? Because people do ask, okay? But the problem is, in the interview, if he just introduced it and said yes, it was confirmed by these computer forensic people and so forth, he didn't even name who they are or anything. But immediately after this is confirmed, okay, by the secretary. He said the message is real. All right, very very shortly after this, uh, Mr. Terrific in this moment that they have with Superman says these computer guys would not come out and say that the message was real unless it was real. They have integrity. They have all the integrity of the world. They wouldn't say it was real if it was not real. It is definitely, truly your parents' message to you. Sorry, but I mean that's those two times. Okay, um, the confirmation uh, of it in the first place, on the news. Yes, it's been verified by all these people. Uh, T-Man, and then the secretary comes around and says the same thing. And later on, the Bravia news interview happens with the ridiculous leader they have, and he goes into that pocket dimension through the portal and shows up to not Superman to Lex and grabs a donut and then says it's genius. This fake message is genius. And then Lex Luthor goes and says, well, it's not fake. I went there trying to find something. Who knew that his own parents would give it to me? So they're very adamant in a very short amount of time to say 4 different times this has been absolutely confirmed that this is the message to Superman. Since he mentions it to Lois the day before, or that night before, maybe Lois put it out in the news that he had said that. People aren't reading news necessarily this fast, okay? Uh, so the very quick change in sentiment around him to where they hate him, the whole of populace hates him, even though the one guy gave him his phone to see what the message was that was being presented. It's jarring that it's that fast and it's everybody. Okay, uh, there seemingly isn't anyone who does not um, take this to be true and then be against Superman, except maybe two of the Justice Gang that are not necessarily against him. They just don't know what to think. But Guy Gardner, the Green Lantern, is certainly taking a stand against Superman now. Anyway, um, Superman does save that child during the kaiju fight, and I've mentioned it before, when the slow motion, and he just pushes her head too far. But she apparently survives because she shows up later on. However, that guy that was in the store that those same little bottles were flying toward, I'm not so sure he survived. Not so sure. But the news informs us that there are no tragedies, no casualties, so we must believe it. So I guess he must have ducked just in time. But you check it out for yourself, okay? It makes a point to show him a couple of times. Unfortunately, they must have cut out from the movie the moment where Superman delivers that little girl back to to her father. And it's sad that you remove fathers and good men from this movie so much and make weaker men of the men that you have. So, when sort of an extreme way of saying that, for some people, an extreme version of this criticism would be that this movie is woke for those kind of reasons. There's some validity to that because there's a weakening of the men and and an exaltation of women in a certain way. Again, I'm not going there with that. I'm just saying that I can see where some people are getting it, and I think it's the extreme view of it. It's taking a little bit too much of that. but it's popular to say it in some ways. To say that most people, most reviewers agree this is not a woke movie. It's certainly not nearly as bad as a number of other things that have been put out recently by Disney, Marvel, and other um, properties. All right, be that as it may, though. Again, that could have been just cut for time, so that's why I won't take it into the criticism part of it, okay? But I would mention it because the shot does exist. So, anyway, next thing, message has been revealed. Yes, okay. That the interaction between him and the Justice League, Justice Gang at that time is whatever it is. Uh, I I don't really care either way with it. Superman seeming to have to defend himself a little bit too much, but then again, it wouldn't be much of a crisis of identity for him if they if the people weren't questioning it very quickly, very strongly, right? But again, it could have been portrayed and could have been uh, played out as an ambiguous thing. You just have Lex Luthor announcing that this is so, and not showing anything really about it. Maybe have later on a crisis of conscience with the engineer that she knows that on behalf of Lex Luthor, she manipulated that and created the footage herself. Okay, that that is where it could have gone. It could have been ambiguous, not overly stating that this is the true message, uh, and then come out later on with this more beautiful message, because that certainly isn't a beautiful message. I didn't even think the very first parts of it were um, beautiful. Nothing in this movie is beautifully played out, and that's what's really unfortunate about it. There's so much that can be that's so beautiful about Superman, but there's none of it plays out as beautiful. They have to tell you that the speech at the end is beautiful, because it's really not that beautiful the way that it is delivered. It's sadly it's just not so. Although the moment with Paul and Clark, which I'll get to in a moment, it's not beautiful. It's just not. It's not well done. Poor writing. Poor Superman. Anyway, moving on. Um, Back to the fortress, which is destroyed. He's got to go. He's got to rush off. I personally, I'm talking about editing and stuff like that. The flying off. You knew where he was going and all that. You didn't have to have that flight part as it was. It's been done. It's finished. It's done. Superman's urgency is not necessarily to get there right then at that moment. Okay, so this is an editing choice, but it shows that that's where the forward hands and the screen is really shaky, and it's cut through a lot of stuff, and the shot's a little strange. There's some criticism behind the shot. I don't have it plays okay around that time, but he gets to the fortress and finds the destroyed robots and has some emotional moments, as it were, with that. But then he's like, Crypto, where's Crypto? And he calls for him and whistles for him. There's three whistles for three. Four. I think there may be four. And three of them would be distress calls from Superman. And the other one is this can also be called a distress call, where he didn't know where Crypto was. And so he calls out for him, he whistles for him, and no Crypto. So then Superman flies off, but it cuts from that to a scene with him cutting across the screen and busting into LexCorp, Luthor Corp offices building, and then he busts through the door of Luthor's office. Some people say he could have flown through that window and stuff like that. I don't care one way or another. I don't mind the door busting. It's one callback to um, a John Byrne comic where he busts through a door. But but the flying scene should have been there. From the Fortress of Solitude back to Metropolis, that's that flying scene. That urgent, gotta get there right now because Crypto's missing. That's my opinion, you know. And it wouldn't have moved it too far in the movie. And like I said, would have been the same thing. That just to me would have been more emotionally impactful. And anyway, there's plenty of people that could have made that observation, uh, but didn't necessarily catch it. Or another urgent flying scene could have taken place too. It's just I'm just mentioning that because it was there on one way and it was not there for the return trip. Um, and I personally think it should have been there for the return trip more. Sorry about that. Um, Somewhere along in that line is Lois Collins, secretary, and Lois is doing her job as a reporter and stuff. You can see that variety of places throughout the film. So the build up of characters in this film is around the Superman characters. So there's other things in this movie that don't allow for full growth of all of that and are distracting and are introductions to other things that that is what really pulls down the movie. So the for me, the parts where they're building up stuff and building the world are cut short too much because of the over bloatedness of the film with all the characters. Like I mentioned, characters galore, and it's just amazing. There's a lot of characters, but anyway, uh, it's unnecessary. But I'm not getting too deep into all that right there. Um, so he flies back looking for Crypto. That's the Luthor Corp tower scene with the desk that he throws into the window, screaming for the dog. Um, and then he quickly shuts it off and is like, "It's just a dog." And I'm mocking a little bit. It's just it's played poorly. Superman is going from screaming fairly violently to almost whimpering, and we get to the end in a little bit. But yeah, we get to move on, move on, move on. But that scene, it could have been played a little differently, and it wasn't, and it's cut a little differently. It ends without any real resolution to the actual scene because it ends with going to the phone of um, um, you know. Anyway, I got to go check some other stuff out some later on, but I'll do that later on. Yeah, but the desk scene just it falls short. It could have been done better, and is not. And anyway, I believe it's right after this that the news thing happens. I'm not sure, but it's pretty close around there. But shortly after that is going to Superman's apartment, Clark Kent's apartment. And there's the jokey, what they call dimensional imp. And yes, uh, Kevin Smith, I'll grant it to him. Shout out to him. He said that what he thought was when he what he thought when it said he said a dimensional imp. That's Mr. Mixes, and I believe that's the way that it's pronounced. It's according to John Byrne, Mr. Mixes. Uh, and I might be just slightly off on that, but it is what he says. And I thought, yeah, that's what I thought when I saw it. Like he just says a dimensional imp. Could be. Of course, I didn't actually see the little imp guy, and it wasn't portraying it and jumping around in different things. It was what it was out there, what you see in the commercial and what you see in the original picture that was released and stuff like that. That's what's there. Okay. Except you see better that the Justice Gang or Justice League is. I'm gonna quit calling it Justice Gang, because that's just a James Gunn thing, putting himself into the picture as much as he can. Um, but the Dimensional Imp, yeah, it's could be, but he didn't. Superman didn't have to deal with it. Maybe he has to deal with it in 30 days. We'll see. It could be the start of the next movie as a crawl that says 30 days later, Dimensional Imp shows up. If you know, you know. All right, but it's a jokey thing in the background while they have a very serious, very character building conversation in the foreground. All right, and that is I don't want to say it wrong, but I think that's my favorite building scene with Clark. Okay. Lois not necessarily, because I think Lois has the better scenes building her character as a reporter. Now between the two of them, sure, that may be so, but as far as I don't have a problem with her in it. I'm just saying that I'm looking at her character and saying that she builds more in the news reporter scenes than she does, at this moment, obviously. Um, so the interaction between the two is fine, and it's good for their chemistry. Uh, but David Cornsweat's performance and line delivery in this scene is very well done, and I'm not gonna nitpick. It's very well done, and this is one of the best parts in the movie. And sadly, I can see where some people could be distracted from how good the scene is by the jokiness that's playing on outside the window, um, and the sound effects that are happening with it. So I'm okay with it myself. I focused into the scene on the interior and the people there, and then on other viewings, I have also taken my focus and attention to these other parts to try to see where some other people were going from or coming from in their reviews, so disliking it. So that would be interesting, though. Would be nice. All right, so he turns himself in. Tells her that he's going to turn himself in, uh, and he professes his love to her, and before he flies away. But he turns himself in. That very next scene, dark to light, and him being slammed down, face being broken into the concrete or the asphalt, uh, uh, creating more work for city workers. I guess that's good, um, for their job security. But let's try to get through this a little quicker. He's mistreated. Uh, some people want to claim that this is political. You're putting your own spin on it, though. Unless this was a pickup shot, which it wasn't. Okay, it was written a long time before the most recent election, before certain policies, uh, that people want to interpret a certain way. So I'm not going to do that. This movie is not that political or not that savvy. Okay, it's really not. And even if it was, it's being misconstrued and miswritten. So it would be a very poor thing. And I'm not going to think that you all are that stupid. So that's all. Be done with it. Um, but anyway, he's taken away, and the government man, Mr. Frank Grillo, Rick Flag Sr., is explaining things to Superman, talking about how he's an alien being from another planet, therefore he doesn't have any Miranda rights. Doesn't really fit because he's an American. Uh, but y'all didn't want to say the American way, so yeah, that's a problem that exists in this movie and exists with the filmmakers, and should have been and should be rethought. But you can go and see some other reviews that speak more to the American character of Superman and um, how he is good because he's American, and and actually look at the true history of the immigration issue regarding this and the Jewish men that created Superman, and you can take a deep dive into that. But ultimately, he's being told that he is not necessarily being able to be controlled by the government. The government's going to have difficulty doing this. Therefore, uh, he's being taken away by Planet Watch, and uh, Planet Watch takes him where the government doesn't even know about, apparently, to this pocket dimension of uh, Lex Luthor, which is not good science and all that, but I'm not going to get into all those different things, bad theories, and stuff like that. But the pocket dimension is also very, very dark and gloomy. It was created in a Minecraft server room somewhere, but nevertheless, a bunch of different glass cages for, uh, prisoners that are there for who knows how long. Um, Mr. Handsome is introduced very quickly, and Metamorpho is introduced in the cell with Superman so that he can create the kryptonite with his hand. Uh, there's no guards beating up on Superman as they showed you in the trailer. That part was cut out. Again, release the gun cut. Be loving to see it all. But let's keep going. I don't know who's there in prison. I didn't really get to see it. They mentioned some political dissident, and they got the view on a guy, but I can't tell who he is. I can't really tell much about him at all. So anybody out there that wants to tell me about these things, that's great. Go ahead and tell me. Well, baby Joey or Joseph, the son of Metamorphos, being held hostage across the way. But Metamorpho doesn't want to listen to Superman. At the beginning, when he starts hurting him with the kryptonite, and Lex Luthor has left him. Of course, I saw Sapphire Stag later on after they get out and everything, but I'm kind of skipping just so I know that I mentioned it. And in the meanwhile, a little cut back to the Daily Planet to show Jimmy and Eve um, some more. The Baravia's, ramping up its invasion again and stuff like that is happening. But let's stay with what we're at here. Um, in the prison is also introduced an army of trained monkeys to type on the computer various mean statements about Superman and hashtags, secret harem, and hashtag stupid Superman or something like that. Whatever else it may be. It's ridiculous. This absolute nonsense. Uh, it's very comic booky. It's really not that comic booky. Yeah, I could see some comic book maybe doing that, but it wasn't done in Superman. Therefore, you have enough in the Superman lore of history to draw from instead of throwing in their new stuff that is stupid. It's just dumb and um, is admittedly by the filmmaker uh, his own way of dealing with his online criticisms and stuff like that. So that's part of that, and we'll keep going here with the rest of the movie too. And continuing on in the Pocket Universe, there's a whole lot of uh, possibilities, so I don't want to get into a whole lot of things. But Mr. Handsome is introduced now. In an interview, James Gunn says it is created by Lex Luthor in a petri dish, and I suppose experiment gone wrong. If you know from the movie, you know the movie. If it is going to be the character and is in the comic books, uh, I don't know a lot about this, but it goes into a Batman character. Somebody might know. Mr. Handsome, being the Batman character, was abusive towards his wife. Some things going on. He's just obsessed with beauty, so he wanted to make sure that his wife stayed beautiful with a bunch of surgeries. His wife gets disfigured because of that, and I think the story goes kills Mr. Handsome, and Mr. Handsome then dons the persona of Mr. Handsome, and is in the Catwoman Defiant comic. You go and check that out all you want to. It's something certainly they could do if they wanted to, or they just introduced a throwaway character, or maybe James Gunn has plans for this new character that's not a comic book character. Who knows? We won't know until we find out sometime down the line, or he says something in an interview. Okay, but yeah, in this prison, again, what happens with Metamorpho making kryptonite. The problem I have is that he doesn't listen to Superman when Superman tries to tell him, he can stop. And it's played, of course, so that he has to stay there for a couple of days, and or a full day, whatever you want to call it. Uh, Lex Luthor comes back the next day with the Mali character, Malik Mali Ali. The Mali is in quotes, so short for Malik. Uh, the falafel, no, cart owner, and he um, he's brought in to ask Superman questions to try to force Superman to tell him something with a game of Russian roulette, if you will. A bullet in a revolver that Lex Luthor then aims and shoots and kills this character within 2 tries. Uh, does make a joke about it. And the president of Bravia is there, Gurkos. A couple of jokes that are thrown in there too, and good or bad, whatever. Distasteful, perhaps. One of them is the the evil of Lex Luthor is a little more apparent because of that. So, but be that as it may, he's in the Pocket Universe. There's cutaways, of course, back to the Daily Planet. as I mentioned earlier, and Jimmy Olsen, uh, and interactions with Eve, Tessmacher, uh, and so forth. Lois and that sort of thing. Lois and the Justice Gang. I said I was going to quit doing that, but her pants are way too short in that whole segment there. Her pants were not short in the other choices that were made for her. So there they are. And there's a whole interaction with her and the Justice League, or with Guy Gardner, and they mention of the hypno glasses, and I say no to that as well. That is not in the comic books. It is not a thing in the comic books. Don't try to tell me it's a thing in the comic books. Hypnosis is in the comic books in a few places, but the hypno glasses are not. Okay. Um, anyway, it's just nonsense, but then it's a confirmed thing instead of just a theory of a character. And it ought to be the theory of a character rather than the actual explanation. Okay, but it's an attempt at an explanation which you don't even need. You ultimately will find out that they already know that Clark Kent is Superman at the end of the film. Uh, if you don't think that that's the way it is, I interpret it that way. It's very clear to me. But anyway, there's the interaction there with all that. That's trying to get the Justice League to assist Clark or assist Superman, get him out of whatever prison he's being held in the Pocket Universe. Um, you know that Mr. Terrific goes with Lois Lane. Why is Metropolis in Delaware? It's a question that I have. Uh, uh, or is she renting a car from Delaware? It doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm just trying to figure this out. But the car that she's driving, that she calls her car, uh, is has Delaware plates on it. So, um, is that what she mentions? She said that she was a punk rocker, and she was a punk rock kid from where? Where did she say? I forgot. If somebody knows, they can tell me in the comments, and maybe that place is in Delaware, and maybe she comes from Delaware. Do you know that if you spend any amount of time, like 3 months, living in a place like wherever Metropolis is, maybe it's in Delaware, but maybe not, uh, that you have to change your license, your registration, and so forth. Do you know that? Are you aware? I hope you're aware. So I assume that she's been there for several years, at least. She should have a new license plate. Again, unless Metropolis is in Delaware. That'll be a first for me. First hearing of something like that. So, but you tell me. You let me know what you think about it. Is Metropolis in Delaware? Anyway, uh, the prison break is about to happen, and the prison break involved is after Mally is shot. That Metamorpho has a crisis of conscience, cries, um, and stops using the kryptonite because, again, Superman says he can get to his son. Well, there's no yellow sun in the place in the Pocket Universe, so he has to create a small version of a yellow sun to somewhat heal Superman from a day plus being, you know, that close proximity to kryptonite. Eventually, it may kill him. I did notice, I think, I'm pretty sure, that it a larger suit was put on Superman, David Gordon Sweat, uh, I believe, because it looked baggier than it normally looks. It looked like the in the belly area a lot of thinning out, so there's a lot of wrinkles and everything in the outfit. So while the kryptonite thing was going on that second day, and you could see the face was all very well, very emperor like from Star Wars, very Emperor Palpatine, wrinkly and drawn in and stuff like that. And I'm okay with all of that. The look of it, it's fine, and also the kryptonite poisoning look of the veins and stuff uh, afterward. But anyway, Metamorpho takes away the kryptonite, gives him some yellow sun power. Superman reacts too quickly. He doesn't allow that to build more. He just enough to get to where he can punch through the glass, and so all that part is now explained. He flies very quickly into the other cell across from them, uh, punches out with an uppercut, by the way. Not just a flick of the hand or something like that, but a full uppercut. Punches out this guy that's holding on to Joey. Now, maybe you tell me if that is some kind of superpowered metahuman villain that is, some bad supervillain guy. I don't know. That's being held by Lex Luthor in order to hold onto the little baby creature. I don't think that the baby creature is done very well. The CGI and stuff like that is it makes it look somewhat realistic enough as far as like a thing being there, but it really just doesn't look like a very good design to me. Maybe that's very very comic accurate though, and I'm just not that familiar with the baby of Metamorpho in the comic books. And I'm not super familiar, in just slightly familiar with Metamorpho from the comic books at all. But maybe that's all um, in the comics and stuff, and somebody can tell me all about it. But in part of this, he gets out. Um, Metamorpho says he can't carry the baby while in some kind of metamorphed state or while he's changing, something like that. So the Superman has to carry the baby. They go in free, uh, and I missed the point that I should have made earlier. They but um, they break free Crypto, who was being beamed into his head super squirrels. Um, which kind of looks like uh, Nintendo 64. Um, what's that? Flying Fox game, Firefox, or one of those flying games that's kind of got panels to create the CGI character. This is not up to date CGI in there. Like I said, the place was created in a Minecraft kind of studio thing, as far as I can tell you. But the um, the uh, the squirrels he's flying after, about four of them, four or five, uh, was built-in panels, and you know what I'm talking about. If you saw it, you know what I'm saying. Uh, Old '80s kind of graphics, '80s and '90s computer um, sort of creations from the time, which were pretty neat looking for the time, but you knew that it wasn't real anyway. But yeah, some computer game throwbacks and stuff like that. And we'll get to the river. Um, but anyway, there's a lot of empty threats that are stated in this whole thing. There's dialogue that works and that doesn't work in that whole situation too. Um, Now, of course, in this meanwhile, as Mr. Terrific and Lois are on the way and land and then start walking toward the tent. There's um there's a fight scene that ensues. It's one of the most elaborate and well thought out, perhaps, in some ways. And then in other ways, for me, is taken away from and ruined, or at least ruined in part, by first song choice, which James Gunn said he wasn't going to do, and then he ended up throwing songs into the film at key points that, like this one, where just I counted the wrong choice. And they ramp up the volume while Lois is contained in this, you know, protective force field. And Mr. Terrific jumps out of the force field to then fight all the people. He punches out some, throws some into the ground. Uh, he has various fight moves. And he also uses his T spheres to uh, beat them up. The various raptors and other characters of Lex's crews that are there to try to stop him, if you will. And again, T Sphere is slung at some of them. Uh, it flies around, hits one another, and the action is followed by sweeping movements around Lois inside the sphere. Um, and maybe it comes out of the sphere a couple of times to, I say sphere, the force field, and comes outside of that. She's being shot out by the raptors and stuff like that, and then they get punched or hit with a T sphere, knocked out in a variety of different ways. And so there's some interestingness to that, and at the same time, there's little sounds, the sound effects to those things um, is off-putting to me. Okay, and it's it's a Looney Tunes type of thing. It goes full on, not full on. It goes partially towards Looney Tunes, and just sound effects that shouldn't really be in that kind of place, in my opinion. So that's just me, maybe, but I'm gonna leave it at that when we try to kick through this. And part of this is as they're trying to fly away, Superman gets hit by two or three raptors and knocked into the river of anti-proton matter. Um, so this river somehow is trapping Superman inside of it. It's not necessarily affecting these raptors so much, but you almost can't see what's happening, either for the darkness of it, the contrast, or the speed of what's going on, the camera movements. Is not necessarily giving you a very good view of what's happening. Now, he does, I think, punch one of them off, or no? I'm trying to remember because he calls for Crypto, and Crypto, I think, takes away two of them. He blasts one of them with his heat vision. Takes him a long time to figure out that he could use his heat vision for something like that. But he doesn't. No, we'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, he's stuck in this river and telling Crypto, help me get out of this uh, this so and forth. Anyway, this so and forth, this river, whatever. He's stuck, and he's headed toward a black hole. Can't get out of the black hole. And of course, Metamorpho also shows up with his and slings out arms. Okay, tentacle-like arms. Uh, Tentacle-like arms. Just it's a very, if I may, Mr. Fantastic kind of moment, but with multiple arms as well. He becomes like an octopus sort of type of character, but he has a rocket pack underneath him, and or part of him is a rocket pack. Again, I'm not that familiar with the Metamorpho character. It may all be in perfect keeping. But that's part of the trailer that some people have seen, that very moment of it anyway, where Crypto is to one side, the left side. He's holding the baby, and Metamorpho's off to the right more, but wrapped up with wrapped around Superman with his tentacle arms. I'm calling them tentacles just because they kind of look like tentacles. Um, in any case, he's headed toward the black hole. The waterfall of this river is the river basically ending in a fall, and they're little, like I said, 8-bit blocks. It's not like a river. So when I say river, don't think river. Um, Kind of looks like Mustafar in 8-bit, and dark except those places where it's being stirred up by Superman. So anyway, uh, think what you want to of it. It, it stretched the realms of my suspension of disbelief. That part, okay. I still was okay with it and buying into it, but when he turns around and he blows his way out of a black hole, that doesn't make sense. And you can try to explain it to me if you like, but it doesn't make sense. Okay? It doesn't make sense. He's out of the river. Shouldn't he be able to fly? That seems more likely that he can put his effort into the flying. And probably a combination of these things is what they're going to say if they ever were to answer my criticism, anybody being they. It's a combination of all the flying and everything that Superman can do. The flying, the blowing, and all that stuff. Okay. I don't buy it. I think it could have been done differently. Now, the music swells to an epicness in this moment, and there's one other place in the movie it does it too. And again, both places, I thought, is swelling to this moment, and it's not doing very good. Now, I haven't mentioned the soundtrack or the score much before this. The soundtrack being just a few pop radio songs, if you will. Call them punk rock if you want to, some of them. But there's just a few things, from maybe four. And, no, it's just they could have been completely gotten rid of from the movie, or left to be on the radio um, in one scene and not amplified later on. Again, if you don't mind me saying, uh, that's probably the way I would have tried to take it. Say that, just leave that on the radio, let everything else be. But they have the ability. They had the ability to use all of John Williams' theme and to really create a good soundtrack around that. I have not heard anybody yet that I can think of that said the soundtrack was in any way awesome. There's some good moments. There's a recreation or a guitar riff version of part of John Williams stuff, and they use part of John Williams the theme of Superman, and they borrow from other stuff too. But they use the theme, the building part of the theme. Okay, the first part, but where it turns in the music of John Williams and says Superman. That moment is in the score, and apparently was in the kaiju fight area of the film, unless it was cut out of the film. because I don't remember hearing that fulfillment of that moment. And it's still diminished even in that. So subdued and stuff like that. Now John Murphy was the one who was doing the music for the film. And there are 33 songs or tracks on the soundtrack score. 33. I think four of them, so four of them are not. 30, 31, 32, and 33. So 29 are score. The four, I think, are the songs. It might be three, but it could be four. Are the songs, and then the the rest of it is a score. John Murphy has 6 tracks by himself, and 8 tracks are John Murphy and the other fellow. Don't remember his name, and I apologize for that. 29 tracks, 6 are from John Murphy. Make sure I say that right. 6 are from John Murphy. That leaves 23 tracks otherwise. Um, 3 and 5 is 8, so therefore 15 tracks are left that are the other fellow, David, whoever he is. Um, and again, none of it is epic and amazing and awesome. John Williams' original totally blows away this version of it. My son pointed out that the Clark and Lois uh, theme, if you will, is a version of Hans Zimmer's um, the piano tune, that slower moment. I'm not going to try to sound it out for you or anything. Y'all can listen to it. So there's an extra note that's played a little faster or something like that, but that it's the same tune. You're getting the same thing. It's call it a ripoff if you like, and I don't know who the credited um, orchestrator or conductor or whatever you want to call it, the composer. Sorry, um, I don't know um, who was credited with that, but whoever it was, it is is apparently and does sound like it comes from another person. So there's a lot of stuff in this movie that borrows from other things throughout the movie. Um, uh, Dialogue more or less, or not so. I'm not sure. Not really concerned about that, perhaps. But just concepts and ideas and thoughts and things like that. Okay, and we're going to get into a couple of them in a little bit, um, but yeah, that's like I said, one of the places where there was a great swelling of music, trying to get away from that black hole. Slows down, slow motion, and then speeds up. I don't know if it over ramps the speed up or what, but they seem to be moving pretty quick, and of course land in Minecraft world. Um, Thankfully, the T sphere, um, the second T sphere, because Crypto got a hold of the one. Uh, anyway, there's a lot that goes on in that scene. Um, but the T sphere finds them. He says, "Terrific," and they fly after it. He's calling out to Crypto to stop trying to chase it down to knock it out so that they can get where they need to go. You know. um, Ultimately, Crypto does catch up to it after flying past Terrific and Lois, who are standing in a collapsing portal machine. And Superman and the baby and Metamorpho fly out, or fly through, break through, whatever you want to say to it. Uh, and they're laying there on the ground. And Metamorpho takes the baby. begins to go away. He, Terrific sends off Lois and Superman to someplace safe, which ultimately is Smallville. And Crypto was destroying the T Sphere and has a little snap at Mr. Terrific. Um, this is like. I did try to find out what some of the dialogue was with that black hole, because he doesn't say he won't survive the black hole. It does say we won't get out of this. We can't escape from this or something like that. And can't get out of the river is one thing. Won't be able to get out of the black hole by himself is what he was saying. He needed Crypto to help him. Uh, and Crypto, is played off to joke fashion so that it can be, um, more precarious a little bit later on. But they head on to Smallville. Crypto goes with, uh, and you've seen the commercial where the dog is on uh, Superman's chest. But anyway, there's a lot of bad dialogue throughout this whole portion leading up to and continuing on. um, of course, they land that evening and at the Smallville Kent farm ranch, this house with cows. There's I, I don't see anything that they're farming. I dislike. I think I may have mentioned it already. I don't care for the Mon Pa uh, presentation. The Mon Pa Kent presentation plays them off as like ignorant hicks. Some people find that humorous, as seen earlier, and but they're played as some people said, um, slow, very simple, intellectually challenged, perhaps. Um, but whatever the characterization you want to call it, it doesn't work for me. It's not the way I have ever seen them portrayed in any comic books or any other, live action or cartoon presentation. I have not seen it that way. This is, therefore, the furthest, therefore, it's the extreme version, and it's more extreme than even taking them into Hickville direction. This redneck, backward, um, real simple folk, supposedly, and it's kind of insulting to say simple country folk, because there's a lot of smarter than you would even begin to think people that are farmers and ranchers and stuff like that. Just don't play these people off like that. Anyway, it's just it it gets it's on the verge of annoying from the beginning, and it gets to be annoying to me. Um, and there can be jokes involved and stuff like that. Um, Dad's real soft spoken, Paul Kent, and slow spoken. Um, and we'll get to that in a second because he's got to wake up yet. But it's just this. I do not like it. It does cut to Jimmy and Eve and cuts back, uh, and there's some stuff going on. How did he escape? Lex says to his crew he's angry. He's throwing a cup on the ground, busting the cup, and doing things spilling everywhere. Tells his people to pick it up. He's I may not have mentioned this yet. He is played as a petulant, spoiled brat. Uh, or comes off as that little whiny baby, loser that can't control his anger, but does it in pettiness. In the comics, he gets mad, angry, smashes things, but he doesn't do it in pettiness. And here, these people pick up all this stuff and set it on the counter, and he flicks it off, sort of casually. That petty thing is what I'm talking about there. That being petty, and it didn't play for me, or it went too far in things. Okay, it just went too far, and they took the Kents too far and stuff. So, the cutting back and forth and stuff like that, and it's all to progress the story with Eve sending the selfies over. Lois gets the selfies that evening too. The next day, Clark and Jonathan have their heart to heart outside. Lex, of course, throws his girlfriend Eve into the pocket dimension thing and prison and so forth. And the story continues to be developed by the intrepid reporters while Lex is losing his mind, needs to get Superman back into the scene so he can do whatever he needs to do, try to beat him up again with Ultraman and so forth. Uh, so he decides to create this dimensional rift on the next day, of course. And the next day is that scene with the cows out in front of the the home there. And again, don't know what they're farming. Uh, there's not really much to say about it. There's not a well developed Kent home story. Um, and I think it's unfortunately just played in the wrong way. Um, but I was against it from the very beginning. When the first picture of the house showed up, I was like, "That's not a Kent. It's not a farm. First of all, it's just not a farm. Farmhouse is different. It's always been portrayed different. You look up Kent Farm and Google it. You might come up with a Superman 2025 version now because it's just out there. But you're gonna find, if you just say Kansas farmhouse, you're gonna see what farmhouses look like, and it typically will show a barn and a probably a two-story type of house out there in the country because it was built that way. They needed some room. They needed bunk places. They need place for some farmhands to stay and stuff like that. I'm not going to get into all the reasons why this is just not well done. It's just not well done. Um, but you know, maybe you bought it. I didn't. I don't care for it. But going on. Uh, and I'm kind of skipping along a little bit, really. I don't know. I'm pushing it, but it's gonna get chaotic here in just a little bit. Okay. Uh, let's see here. Hmm. Oh yeah, the chaos in the Daily Planet is what I was thinking about there. The, there's not a connection, and that's the thing. There's a rift that starts happening, but and there's chaos going on at the Daily Planet where people are trying to run and leave. Except our core group of people, the six people ultimately, and you'll find out about that if you watch the movie or when you do. Hopefully, you've already watched the movie. But the chaos going on in the Daily Planet, everybody trying to run out. There's no explanation given as to why, because there's no statement that the rift is coming straight at them or anything of that nature. Okay, uh, so we don't really have a reason why they would be doing that. It seems like news reporters, they would be busy, 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 busy getting it, getting stories. There's a lot happening at this moment. Okay, so that's really what would be, being done. I would say, I would think, at a place full of journalists, not chaos. Try to get out and run away. Uh, if they had explained it by looking out the window and saying that rift is headed right toward us, but I have looked around, seen the movie 4 times plus, and I have looked and looked and looked and tried to find the Daily Planet, and the glimpse that I thought I found was way off to the left side of the screen, far away from the central area of the rift. Far away. Lex Luthor's building was straight in front of it and tore the thing in half. So it doesn't make a lot of sense that 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 they're in such chaos and people in Daily Planet are trying to run. Now I'm dwelling on it more, but there's no explanation given to it, so it doesn't make sense to me. And maybe again, you heard something I didn't hear, but I certainly didn't find that to be the right place for that to happen. Anyway, leaving that alone and going on back to the Kents. Talk with Pa and Clark, and I'm not the only one that saw it. His eyes, Pa Kent, couldn't choose between looking at Clark and looking at his cue card off screen to read his lines. As best explanation I can get, because it was flicking back and forth as fast as I've ever seen two eyes flicker back and forth, um, and it was moving quick. Okay, and him reading or giving his lines that is supposed to be the beautiful speech, the motivating factor of this whole movie. It's got to be, because there's nothing else in this whole movie to give you a motivation or some kind of hopeful dialogue. But it's dreadfully bad. And you have to reinterpret it from what he actually said to something else in order to get the idea that this is a good motivational speech, because it is not a good motivational speech. And the crux of it saying that, well, first of all, I'm going to say this. The beginning, the foundation of the speech saying that parents aren't there to, and it's worded a certain way, but they aren't there to teach their children, how to be a good person and what to do in their life. Uh, Ultimately saying parents are not to give core values to their children. Dead wrong. And I stand firmly opposed to that. It is one of a parent's most important jobs to hold good values and to present those and instill those in your children, to teach them good things, that there is a difference between right and wrong and so forth. Okay? There is ultimately good and evil, and they are to be taught what to do, how to be good. If you think that it didn't come off that way, I mean it totally does. Again, I've heard it from the commercials, didn't like it then, okay? And did not like it in the movie. It is not correct. All right? From the commercials, it's only the latter part of the message. But the first part of it, the foundation of it, the idea that parents are not supposed to be instilling their children with, strong, good values. Now, our definition of good is supposedly maybe different than somebody else's definition of what's good. I don't think it's all that difficult, but ultimately, of course, Judeo Christian values is what's been presented all throughout the history of Superman. Okay, the core substance of it, between right and wrong, and that is the substantial part of the foundation of what it is that should be taught. Okay, so he fails in that. All right, we're not just giving tools to our children. I'm a parent. That was not my job to just give you a few tools so you can go make fools of yourselves and stuff. It might play as ringing somewhat true to some people. Again, they're reinterpreting that. The foundation substance of that is not right. That is absolutely wrong. And then going on from that, your choices, what you do makes you who you are. Uh, Saying to Clark that, no, 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 no. It might show it. Again, I'm reinterpreting it, though. I'm changing the words in order to make it sound better. That is not the case, though. Okay? So, the, the, it hmm. Part of the thing did start out well when he said, the way you interpreted the message from your parents tells more about you than anything your parents wanted you to be. That that can be true. That much, I would give it that. Could have been. It's started out sort of in a good direction, but then they flop it and change it and mess up the foundation of the speech. So no, I mean that's just, it's not that good, and you have to interpret it, and you have to twist the words around to get a different message out of it than what was really being portrayed on the screen. And so that's just bad writing or bad philosophy. Whichever one it is, bad philosophy or bad writing to try to produce a right philosophy, either way, it doesn't work, and you have to fix it and go into changing. And I don't know how five people could have watched that scene and said, and could not have said, you're not wording it very well, and it's not really coming off well, and it doesn't hit. It's not some emotional hit like they wanted, and as they try to portray it, and David Corn Sweat does his best to portray it as like it really hits him emotionally and works, and you know his portrayal is all right, but it doesn't come from the speech given to him. Go to other iterations of of this character to find good motivational speeches. There's so many that this didn't have to happen this way. Okay, but it did. But it, you know, it's another one of those straws. Plenty of straws. Um, yep. All of the straws break the camel's back. Can't just name one. The stories being published along the way, the chaos that was going on with the Daily Planet and them all leaving the Daily Planet, they jump into the spacecraft, which I don't know how Perry knew that the thing was on the roof anyway, unless she told him, but there's no indication of any of that stuff. But anyway, um, mm, mm, mm. And Lex is mixed in there. There's all kinds of stuff going on. But he gets back to the metropolis, and the buildings are being about to be destroyed or in the process of being destroyed. All kinds of destruction going on. People being evacuated. There's not enough time for the evacuation to happen the way they um, want it to in order to save all the people alive. Of course, Superman is showing up at the last second for the building falling on a woman whose car has been stalled from some weird chaos on the bridge that doesn't make any sense either. Uh, I hope I never live in a city where when something bad is happening behind you, which you're driving away from, everybody decides to turn and crash into each other. Um, and ultimately they can get out of there a whole lot faster than this one particular woman. Uh, but Superman saves her, while a dozen or so people are probably still in the building being crushed to death and destroyed. Uh, and that's my cynicalness of it. I don't buy that you can just escape, especially the way that they were acting earlier with cell phones everywhere. They didn't want to get pictures of all these things happening. Um, but they were on the bridge too, uh, and somehow they all got away so much faster than the cars got away. All the people. Uh, but what, you know, you look at that for yourself. There's a lot of chaos, a lot of people dying all over the place in Metropolis, which is a natural assumption is going to happen when stuff like this happens, and this is just what's going to happen. And Lex Luthor's all for it too. You know, a little bit later on, he says they chose him, let them die. So anyway, uh, it is what it is, right? Uh, but yeah, stories being published along the way so they can come out at the very end. There's a fight that begins to ensue between the engineer and Ultraman, and of course the engineer knocks down uh, Mr. Terrific out of his chair, busts that thing up, and it's kind of out cold for a little bit. Um, and that fight happens in the stadium. You can watch that, of course. Uh, it's the first good lick, I think, that Superman gets in on Ultraman, where he grabs him and flips him upside down. Or I think I think before that, as they're crashing in, he might get some kind of hit in that doesn't knock him out or anything, but it kind of puts Ultraman on a pause condition. Uh, and then, after being flipped over by Superman, he's down for a few seconds, and the engineer gets to start fighting. So, engineer takes some shots, uh, throws some blades at him, and comes and tries to tackle him, and some different things. And the fight ensues. It's not so bad, but it is very chaotic in movement. There's a lot of uh, happenings going on. And again, the suit's not doing David Cornsweet any favors. The nanites are then used to try to choke Superman, replacing the air in his lungs, and he staggers a little bit to take off in flight. So he's flying uh, up towards space. How far he's trying to get, I'm not totally sure. Um, to try to get possibly away from the engineer to kind of separate the nanobite or the nanite connection, maybe. Or they say something like trying to use the friction to get the nanites off of him. He does pull it away from his eye at one point so he can see a little bit. Otherwise, his head is contained in this nanite um, um, uh, whatever you want to call it, the casing. All right. He flies up pretty far up. Engineer and Ultraman, latch on to him the best they can, uh, especially the engineer, and begin to fall back down. There's no re-entry burn like there is in like any other Superman that has anything like this. Uh, like Superman Returns, for instance, it's falling down. He has a re-entry. Uh, Maybe somebody could explain that away. I don't think so. I think they were far enough up, and then they came back down. There should be some re-entry, I think. Nevertheless, buy that if you will. Ultimately, does that, and what it affects is a knockout of the engineer, disabling in a way of the nanites, of course, not being controlled by the engineer in an unconscious state. So I assume that's the best explanation I have for it. So he's able to pull the nanites out of his lungs and cough them out mostly the rest of the way. And Ultraman of course, is there. They busted through subway area, I guess, because they're not down into the rift yet. The rift is on the way still, and the fight begins with Ultraman. Engineer's out for the count, and for the rest of the movie, not sure if she pops back up at the end where they're taking her away or anything else. I'm not. I don't recall. Uh, so I don't think she shows back up. So just let her be. An Ultraman fight with Superman then begins, and it continues on. And it's revealed at that moment, of course, that it's a clone of Superman. So via Superman 4, Lex Luthor takes a hair of Superman. Uh, I say they borrow it from that, and creates Ultraman. I'm trying to make sure I don't miss too much. Now, I'm not telling you a lot of the things I saw that I would say are borrowed. Borrowed and misused. So you got Ultraman, and you go check the comics out for Ultraman, is turned into a clone, an imperfect clone of Superman. He's dumber, but he's stronger and more easily controlled. It doesn't tell you necessarily how he was controlled. He's just under the control of Lex Luthor. What's his motivation? What was he doing? He's just stupid and was created by Lex. Lex doesn't tell him anything like he does in Superman. He's like, "I created you. You do what I tell you to do," and stuff like that. Nothing, none of that. So we don't really have any reasonings provided for us. Now the thing about this is that this Ultraman is surrounded by flying cameras. Okay, he's been surrounded by these flying cameras from the very beginning of the movie when it was the Hammer of Bravia. He and it's and this is I'm sorry. Maybe somebody could tell me that it didn't happen when he was arrested, but I'm pretty sure his little flying cameras are around Ultraman while he's being arrested. Okay, and and he's being taken to the tent to be put through the portal, surrounded by cameras. Okay, these flying orbs, cameras, not T spheres, but the flying cameras of Lex Luthor that happened with. So this is why I say stupid Superman. Superman does nothing about it, says nothing about it, doesn't mention it, doesn't put the two and two together. The Hammer of Baravia with the flying orbs goes on to being arrested. He's got the flying orbs, and then now with the flying orbs around him, and it takes a while in this to say, "Oh, you're watching us through these orbs, huh?" And no laser blast from his eyes to blow a few up right away. No, he calls in crypto to blow them up. Or to first he's got to knock Ultraman off of him after a mm, lengthy fight. It stretches the request for us to suspend disbelief. Yes, you have to suspend your disbelief. You only do that so much. You buy things and say, okay, in this world, this works. But they push it too far in too many instances, over and over and over again. It's not necessarily, without any kind of redeeming momentary things. The fight's kind of cool. There's an interestingness to it, but again, that's not Ultraman. So you're throwing away a character. Did we throw away Mr. Handsome? Are we making characters that aren't going to actually be in the DC universe? Are we creating new characters for the DC universe that aren't in the comics? Um, you can mention a few that you say, well, that was created for this and then was put into the comics. Harley Quinn is the great example of that. Wonderful. Well, they created a character and did something with the character that was so beloved that they put it into the comics. Okay, so it was well accepted. It's not the same thing as doing what was done here. There's little swaps that are happening and stuff like that. And there are people that are upset, maybe not as upset as they said they might be, um, uh, about Ultraman being a clone of Superman. David Cornsweet's the actor, but of course there's stuntmen involved and stuff like that. It's it's something that was predicted early on. I knew what it was going to be very early on in it. Even though they were using the name of Ultraman when they could have done anything else. Head Raptor, I don't know, but he could have had a Raptor uniform on and just been the bulky Raptor. I don't know. Alpha Raptor, whatever. Um, again, just misuse and missed opportunities. Misuse and missed opportunities. Um, are you going to bring him back later on as the Ultraman type of person in the comic books? Probably not. It seems more like this should be a Bizarro. And it could have been Bizarro. He could have played as Bizarro. Probably saved you money in special effects to make it Bizarro in some of these scenes. I'm just saying, um, it seems painfully obvious with me looking at it. Somebody might think, well, he had to write it and come up with it. Yeah, but there's a team of people around him that know about these things. Um, that just shouldn't play off this way. Anyway, this is a little joke about Crypto. He calls Crypto in to knock Ultraman off and says, uh, "Look at these toys. Crypto, get the toy." And Crypto jumps around and destroys all, 12, 15, 25 toys. I don't know how many there are. And blinds the control tower so they can't control the fight. So there's a fight going on where they're trading blows now. And there's good fighting back from both sides, but no motivation. I was almost hoping with the borrowing and all this stuff that was happening that the phrases were used: destroy Superman, and then first I have fun. Maybe all that would should have come out in this situation, but it didn't. But it would have been probably funner for some people than the dialogue that does exist or that doesn't exist. Again, we have a muted Ultraman where he was talking before. He was having a responsiveness and speaking, and it should have continued. But anyway, after this Ultra fight and going on that happened, the killing of Ultraman or whatever it is, maybe somebody could explain to me too. I don't really have a bad problem with this. I saw what happened and I'm okay. Uh, but Superman has to dislocate his arm. His arm is being pulled, dislocates his arm, and I took it as he did something in order to get it dislocated, and then was able to sling Ultraman. Uh, Maybe Ultraman got off balance in that and was able to swing him around into an oncoming bus that was being sucked into the black hole vortex that was in front of below him. Well, it's in this pocket universe rift, so gravity's probably all kind of messed up, right? But they didn't really say gravity was messed up earlier in the film, so I'm kind of reinterpreting that must be what's going on with where they were at and what they were doing, unless he's just flying himself against that, you know, um, ceiling area. Uh, anyway, it looked like a place they landed. But yeah, anyway, a bus is being sucked by, and he knocks. Ultraman into the bus, pops his shoulder back into place. All fine. That all works for me as far as like interesting what he had to do. But maybe y'all could explain. Somebody could explain out there how he gets better leverage on um, on Ultraman. Whoever's holding his arm, anybody holding their arm. How does dislocating your shoulder give you better leverage or better flex or something, strength against that person? I'd like to know. It would be an interesting kind of scientific question, if you will. Um, but uh, serious, weighty kind of moment. He pops his shoulder back into place. That's all of the, mm, you know, um, I wouldn't say it's a joke per se, but it's all of the um, subversion you need, if you will, from what happened and the big fight that happened, and how important it may be, the popping back into place, like, ooh, you get the reaction from the audience. It's all you needed. And then he needs to be able to stand up, fly out of there, and head on to the next thing. But no, they pull a joke, and you already heard it in trailers and stuff that it's not playtime. Quit laying around. And he said, I'm not playing around. I'm doing important stuff. The whole Star Lord line. There's just too much Guardians of the Galaxy flavor, rather James Gunn flavor, that he puts a lot into Guardians of the Galaxy, and therefore we would associate it as that here. And that joke is just, it's out of place, ruins the moment, takes away the weight. There's so much of that throughout the movie, where there's jokiness that takes away the weight of the goings on, that the ridiculousness of it is too much. Again, too much is the phrase. It's just too much. It's you taking it too far. Now he's leaving that area, flying toward Lex. Mr. Terrific flying on top of Crypto, because his little chair thing is gone. But let's get it where we're going. We got to get where we're going and get to Lex. Busts through, knocks. Lex trying to escape. Says to leave the rift open and all that stuff. Got to give Mr. Terrific something to do when he gets back. Um, Now, I'm not very familiar with the character of Mr. Terrific. I thought it was fine the way it was portrayed and everything, but it's a little bit of a mixed bag, because sometimes, and I've heard the criticism of this, but sometimes he's very just plain serious and just straight, deadpan and everything, and then he's saying things like the joke I just mentioned, and saying, "You brought the dog, man," and you've heard all these things. So that other tone is, if it's his character, I'd be happy to know that that's the case. So far, I've only heard that he's very serious and very smart, of course. So I'm ultimately all right with all of that. I think his jokes that come out of place are not good, like those two. Um, and he says some things that are more on the sarcastic side. I would take his humor being sarcastic, being probably what he was saying. There's a Lex Luthor employee that says, this machine shouldn't be doing that. Can you stop it? And his sarcastic humor in that's I would assume that that's his humor, rather than the more um, kind of a throwback old jive talk, which is the criticism that I heard about him, that he's speaking in that fashion and that it doesn't play well. That was some reviewer said that, and maybe they're right, and I can see that and say, okay, it seems like the way he was first portrayed toward the beginning and in the middle of the film, and the sarcastic humor and the concern for his T spheres was probably as far as the humor should have gone and the talking should have gone. But then he continues on beyond that. Um, but maybe that's his character, and if that's his character, I accept it completely. But I could see if there's a criticism out there from somebody who knows the character that he wouldn't jive talk, then you know maybe he shouldn't. So be it. Whatever the case is. And let me go on from there. Let's see here. Now I don't know whether or not Ultraman's been killed by this bus thing and into the blown thrown into sucked into the black hole vortex. Okay, and I'm not mentioning a lot of stuff that's mentioned. There's so much in this film that 3 hours of explaining will not get through it all. And I could go on for a lot longer, uh, but I'm not going to be able to do it either. We're going to have to stop before long. But continuing on for the moment here, with my statement, I don't know for sure that he's dead, although it seems like, if you want to talk to somebody about black holes and what's really going on with black holes and the idea of black holes and stuff like that. And you'll find out more than I could explain right now. But should be dead, sure. Is he being just sucked into some other dimension? Perhaps. Maybe sucked to another time and space, another place a long way away from here. And Ultraman will come back as the Bizarro that we want to see on screen. That would be great. I'm not saying Bizarro should have been in the film this time. Okay, I'm saying that the Bizarro character will be very interesting to see him show up, and uh, in the iterations that I recall, he's a clone of Superman that's imperfect and then flawed, and is trashed by Lex Luthor, um, especially the Man of Steel series that brings Bizarro into it. Uh, Nevertheless, whatever he becomes, if he becomes the Ultraman of the other universe and he learns to speak again and stuff like that, and becomes whatever it is he's supposed to be in that other universe, I kind of just doubt all that. Although the theories were surrounding it to say, oh, if he's Ultraman, this, that, and the other reason, and you can look all of that stuff up for yourself. But whatever he's going to be. I'll tell you my brothers, if it comes back, if they continue this stuff, and we have to endure this, then you know, I would rather Bizarro. Let Bizarro be the one that comes up now, and I'm going to. I don't know. I have put a review out on Letterboxd, uh, spelled as it is without the E before the D. All right, letterboxed. You can try to look up um, the reviews, and Greater Love 2 as the review handle, if you don't mind. And I'm pretty sure my name is in there though too, so you can check me out there. Um, but yes, Lex trying to escape. He knocks into Lex as he comes through the window. Mr. Terrific jumps into the window, and for a second, nobody knows precisely why, I suppose. Um, Crypto disappears, and Superman gives his speech, his I'm human speech, a little crybaby speech. And yeah, I can mock it, and probably should. That's what you never understood about me. Come on. Like one person said, talking to your bully, and then you're whining about Why are you being so mean to me? Why you beat up on me? I'm trying to just be the best person I can be. And it doesn't play as well as people have said, in my opinion. It certainly didn't play well for me, although it's an okay speech. The performance of the speech, it comes off, as I already said, crybaby. It's not the Superman presentation that would really work for me. And they were just a little bit away from it in several places. In some places they got it. Uh, at least David Cornsweet got it. But I mean, seriously, Lex Luthor has to tell us that that speech was beautiful. That's so beautiful, but it doesn't matter. And he's the little brat that he is, and starts yelling at Superman, poking his chest. Uh, Maybe he doesn't get that close. I don't know, but it says that the government gave permission for him to kill Superman, and he's gonna take it. Maybe not today. Blah, and it gets interrupted by Crypto, the super dog, jumping and grabbing his shoulder area shirt, I guess. Knocks him over a desk, starts slinging him around like Hulk did to Loki in the Avengers movie. Um, Again, interrupting, the ultimate motive, not motivational, just the ultimate speeches at the end being interrupted that way. Um, Instead of allowing dialogue between Superman and Lex, and Lex has already had his envy speech and all this stuff, and during the fight with Ultraman, I'm not even getting into all that. It's just this a spoiled, petulant brat vibe to him, whiny crybaby, uh, both Lex Luthor and Superman. Superman not so much, but it's in that direction. And uh, I just say so what to that in part. It falls short, but it's better than most of the movie, and therefore it's all right. You know what I mean? When I've endured all this garbage that I see before, and the failings and the mistakes, and then they're trying to build to this, and they present something that's a little bit better. It's like, okay, but really, this is the best you could do, and you had years to do it. Years. Don't tell me we didn't have very long. Years. I'm telling you, they've had years to get this right. Probably 4 or 5 years, because this has been talked about and offered to James Gunn since the Suicide Squad, when he started putting that together. He chose that over doing Superman, so he had the ability to have some thoughts about it all the way back then. Yeah. So he's had about 6 or 7 years to figure something. And seriously, there's probably 1,000 comic books he could have just opened and said, okay, here's a Superman motivational speech. That would have been better than what we got. So I know for sure that some John Byrne speeches in the comic book run of his were better than this, by far. The, go look up the end of the run of the Man of Steel, the 6 comics, the last few pages. There's a speech by Superman. It's fantastic. Oh my goodness! And John Byrne's still out there. He can write some dialogue for you. Oh man. Anyway, Lex is getting arrested and stuff like that. He's busted up by uh, well-meaning, well-intentioned crypto. Um, Crypto is mostly all right. It's somewhat annoying in some ways, and you could tell it was CGI dog the entire time. It seems like well, I suppose they couldn't, but maybe they should have found uh, a dog to put in a cape, and let that dog do some actions, and then take it from there to CGI it. But they built a CGI dog, and it had to be CGI dog throughout the whole thing. And I have a feeling that it changed sizes a few times. But that's my opinion. It didn't seem to. It didn't work all the time, in my opinion, too. There's CGI, computer generated uh, version of something that we know to be real in real life, a thing that exists is uh, is hmm. But mostly they did all right with that. That may have been most of where that $360 million budget went, putting together CGI dog. So closing out here, getting to the last part of it, uh, the release of people and monkeys and stuff like that from the uh, Pocket Universe is shown on screen, and Eve has her reconnection with Jimmy. Don't know what to think about some of that stuff. Just the whole Jimmy, girls thing is just come on, you again stretching the desire for me to suspend disbelief. Okay, um, it's not too bad in it. At least most of it is Miss Tessmacher and the connection between them two, the two of them, which they had before Lex. So you know, um, and there's some funny lines with that. It's just some mistreatment by Jimmy that I think maybe he needs to address in his own heart. But anyway, but it finishes up all of that and goes to the Fortress of Solitude after the connection. Let me finish this up. Um, on the streets of Metropolis with all these people and creatures coming out of the Pocket Universe, Superman says to Lois, you know, Miss Lane, and thought I'd give you an interview. And they say, oh, over here. So they're heading into a building, which I saw as Josie's Arcade or something like that. You may be able to tell me, but I'm pretty sure it said arcade. It may have said Arcadia or something like that. It might be a mall. Uh, but it looks more like a mall than an arcade, you know. Uh, but you tell me what it says. I just quickly tried to read it. But anyway, they go in there and have their little flying up in the air scene, kissing each other, and it closes out on them. It goes back to the street where Jimmy and Superman and Lois had walked past Perry White. And I saw at that moment that Perry looked at Superman in a particular way and knew it was Clark Kent. And then after that, it comes back out to Jimmy and Perry. And Perry says, how long have those two been hooking up? And Jimmy says, about 3 months. So they both know that Clark Kent is Superman. And that's as plain as day, but does not make good sense. Yes, and they're claiming all these the hypno glasses and stuff like that, but they've known, and Jimmy's known for months, right? That's what he says. Oh man, is it inconsistent? No, not necessarily. That's just the way that was decided to be played. Maybe somebody says no, they didn't. Go check it out. I've watched it 4 times. They both know. And it goes from there and cuts on to Fortress of Solitude with bad choices of the punk rock songs and stuff like that. And one robot turns on the radio to play a punk rock song. I understand they set up earlier he's a punk rocker or punk rock Superman or whatever that's supposed to mean. It's just the James Gunn flavor of things. But playing it on the radio is all, Star Lord vibes. It is not Superman type of stuff. It's just not. Um, Before turning that on, of course, Supergirl does show up. So the Supergirl scene where she crashes through some other way, thought the door was a different way. Why'd you move the door? I didn't. Points to where the door would be. Of course, if you know the movie, the fortress turns. So maybe he did move the door, or the robots moved the door for him. Whatever the case is, yeah, whatever. Why'd you move the door? She might have a point. Um, I think I think the punk rock songs were a bad choice. I think playing Supergirl this way is not necessarily a good idea. The idea is, of course, it's going to be called Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, and it's going to be based on a comic book where apparently she's going through this crisis of some sort, and she is played as a partying drunkard of some sort that is foul mouthed. And, it's not attractive, ladies, to be foul mouthed. Using bad words is a bad idea. And uh, all the Loises that have done that, that's, again, bad idea. It's not attractive, ladies, to say bad things and use bad language. So, same for Supergirl. Same Supergirl and Lois. You're both wrong for doing it. Like what I say or don't, it doesn't matter to me. But yeah, the introduction to Supergirl, um, I have questions, and we'll see whenever the Supergirl movie comes out, if it comes out, assuming it's coming out. But it was uncalled for her to say what she did to Superman. Um, just uncalled for, and therefore maybe will be addressed at some point. Maybe morality at some point will be addressed by Superman. He can say uh, to everybody how they ought to clean up their behavior. Let's see what next here. Um, I mentioned I think the minor crisis of identity because of the message of his biological parents is striking him wrong, and it's it's a little bit too manufactured. Uh, but I can see it. They set it up as far as just words, but it's manufactured still. That's why I do what I do. It's why I am who I am. Is because of the message my parents sent me. Well, now it's a different message. Like, oh man, now I interpreted it one way. That thought it was going to end this way, and then it ultimately ends a different way. I mentioned that Sapphire Stag was in this. Uh, and we're at the end, trying to make sure I don't miss anything. Crypto's going off with Supergirl. And then, of course, if you know the end credit scene after the credits start, actually, um, the early mid credit scene, early mid, um, is Superman with Crypto. Why wasn't Supergirl with Crypto on the moon? Because they were the ones that left. Huh. Well, maybe they didn't really care to think about that. But nonetheless, whatever it may have been, um, the robot and Superman are talking. He names him Gary. Well, he names himself Gary, and then Superman says, "Yeah, Gary." So he accepts that name instead of a number for the robots. Of course, in the iterations I've been more familiar with, these robots had names. Okay, um, Kelex is one of them. Uh, been a staple to have Kelex, and you go check the Death and Rebirth of Superman, the Death of Superman, Funeral for a Friend, and the Return of Superman. That whole series, there are robots in the Fortress of Solitude, and utilized correctly, stuff like that. Even though on Krypton, in the early part of John Byrne's run of Man of Steel and the new Superman series was on Krypton. There was Kelex and then Kelor and there's others. The robots all had names, so I'm used to that, and don't know why they should be called Superman robots or just by numbers, you know. But not very creative group of people behind this. So why would Superman be that creative? Anyway, you got Gary. You got Gary, with the scratch on his face and so forth. And but this robot choosing this bad song, and by the way, there are two versions of the lyrics that I found online for the punk rocker song, and the one in the movie. It says a certain thing that I would, if I want to be really super critical, I'd be like, this is really, really terrible, and completely ruins um, a lot of stuff. But I'm not that far into it. I just think you could throw out the music there and put some score to the film. It needs the score to take it out, but in the James Gunn and Marvel kind of fashion of somewhat recently, it is, it takes us out in a couple of songs and then gives us some score later on. But again, the score is, you know, meh, kind of meh. Of course, it ends that scene with Superman leaning back, watching different home videos, and the camera spinning around Superman, and maybe the videos going around in some direction, same direction or a different direction, I don't know. And looking at a few different scenes, which are supposed to be very heartwarming, old um, home movie kind of stuff. And it's kind of what we fade to black on. And then a very late end credit scene, uh, which is just a minor interaction between uh, Mr. Terrific and Superman. Superman apologizes for making a suggestion, and anyway, building's a little bit off, yeah, foot or two, not quite. Nevertheless, whatever it is, uh, the film doesn't completely work for me, and in so many ways that it ultimately just does not work for me. It's not a good film. It struggles to be uh, uh, somewhat coherent. There are a few good moments and good places in it, um, but ultimately, I dislike throughout the entire thing, and I dislike The borrowing and misuse is really troublesome to me. The underuse, the non realization of the potential. That that's what was most frustrating to me is the potential that exists and letting it flop. Okay, And I don't necessarily mean financially, although I think that exists too. I'm paying attention to all the aftermath of this stuff where people are coming out and saying, "Oh, this movie is so amazing. It's getting all the critics' rave reviews and stuff like that." But before I get to that, the title sequences and the title usage is a throwback and a uh, eh, I can't say an homage. I can't say any of that because it doesn't work for me. It's a very nice looking stuff, but it is reminiscent of the Donner version of Superman. So there's borrowed, and misused, underutilized, unrealized. You know, all this stuff is in better movies. Superman 2025 is not as good as Superman 1978 or Superman the movie, as one critic decided to point it out. It's not. It's never been called. He's never been called Superman as a movie before. It's been Superman the movie, Superman 2, Superman 3, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, Superman Returns, Batman v Superman, The Man of Steel, um, and then other things like the shows or The Adventures of Superman, Lois and Clark, stuff like that. Maybe one of them says Superman, but I don't remember any off the top of my head. It does not come to me that there's a Superman title to any iteration except comic books. Okay, except book form. There's no other iteration of it being Superman. But yeah, he borrows the title format, the kind of zoom to the screen, focusing on the word, the name of the um, person, um, the name Superman, pulled out to that. The S shows up and goes away, not in exact like fashion as Richard Donner's Superman, but the just the title credits, the names that come up on the screen come up in a very like fashion as as that. Now, I'm anyway, borrowed stuff, and not done as well as it was done in the borrowed stuff. The clone of Superman being taken from a hair was said in this one. It was explained and shown more in Superman 4. And if we ever get a recut, um, remastered, and maybe fleshed out version of Superman 4, then maybe we'll get those parts that we really would be wonderful to have uh, with the first nuclear man um, before the second nuclear man. Um, maybe someday we get all that. It'd be really neat, and then flesh it out even more. Um, but yeah, here we get told we're doing something, and then it just happens. And in other places, we get shown. We get shown how it's done, how you're doing it, trying to explain it. From this protoplasma I've created from Superman's hair cells. Um, anyway, again, unbelievable science, but still out there and um, better illustrated the version that's given to us. Um, and I could say that about some other things too. The credits sequences, by far, by far, we should have had some epic music building up to say Superman on the screen at that moment. What do we have? We have a little pop rock, pop radio uh, version of a song called Punk Rocker. whatever it is, I don't even care. But it's playing over where it should be epic music. Again, missed opportunities. Missed opportunities, messed up stuff. Um, and I don't buy the premise that it's supposed to be so comic booky and Looney Tunesy that really works for comic book movies. Eh, Come on, I don't buy that premise is a requisite, nor what the majority of people wanted. Now, as far as critics and the raving reviews and all this stuff, as I said, and I read off to you what 20, 15 name, 25 names probably, and I watched twice as many or more reviews, and have looked at the titles of reviews and want to go listen to them. They're 30 minutes long each and more, but I'm happy to listen to other people and try to get some perspectives and stuff like that. People that want to uh, present some kind of information to me, and love to see those things. Don't mind hearing what you got to say. Okay, but anyway, uh, the idea that some people said, well, this isn't a divisive movie, divisive. That's so wrong. People are not scoring this super high. I've not seen any of these reviewers, even the very, we think this is a great movie, initially saying that anyway, then saying, yeah, we're giving it a 10 out of 10. Nobody's doing that. Highest I've heard so far is like an 8, and maybe a solid 8. I'm giving this an 8 score because it has its flaws, and then they mention a lot of flaws that I mentioned, and but either say they're just dismissing it, they're just buying it, or it works for them. Um, it's not um, it's not a good thing to tell people. Well, you just have to buy into this. No, that's not a good excuse. I can try to pretend I do that, but no. Disconnect your brain and just accept the universe that it's in. Well, no, not necessarily. Or I can do that and still expect it to be making sense, in a variety of different ways, as I pointed out some different things. Um, but I'm not going to rehash the whole movie or anything like that. But also coming out and telling lies. Oh, the Rotten Tomatoes. I'm going to tell you, Rotten Tomatoes. Oh my goodness. Uh, the Rotten Tomatoes score for this movie is 96% positive. Let's see here. The critics score, and we computer won't act slow right now. That's weird. Going to Superman. Rotten Tomatoes has a couple different scores. Okay, and I'm not just talking about critic score versus um, the audience score. And the audience score was just yesterday. I think it was 96. It came out pretty high on uh, Rotten Tomatoes. I want to say nine. I want to say it was close to 90, but probably a little bit lower. Right now, on the critic side, it is down to 83%. It has dropped every day since the movie came out. On the top critics, instead of going to all critics, is their other setting. It's a 72% on Rotten Tomatoes. So it's 83% when they supposedly include every critic they have, um, whatever their determination for critic is, which uh, come back to that some other time, um, maybe. But then the what they call top critics, so the ones they're scrutinizing with, 72%. 72% is the amount on Rotten Tomatoes for Superman Returns, by the way, if you didn't know. On the audience, verified audience. Now, I've watched it 4.5 times. Am I a verified audience person? No, probably not. Let me tell you this. Let's do this. Um, I'm gonna pull this down because I want you to be allowed to see this. And Rotten Tomatoes. There we go. So you see, the all critics is 83%, top critics 72%, verified audience, I ought to be part of this, is 93%. All audience is at 90%. All audience. All right? It says all audience. And this number has been dropping, but it has dropped only to a certain extent. Now we're on the page of Superman and all this stuff. Here's mine. Okay? But before I do that, I'm going to prove something to you. Right over here. And go to my ratings. You see that? Jurassic World. Jurassic World's been up there, since I reviewed it. F1, How to Train Your Dragon, Final Destination, Karate Kid, The Accountant, Love Hurts, Novocaine, Death of a Unicorn, Legends of Tarzan, etc., etc., etc. Okay. You know what they've deleted from this? My Snow White review and Superman. And I have posted my Superman review to them more than 4 times. I'm going to go to at least the 5th time now. Let's go to Superman, Superman, Superman. We'll go back to Superman. Now, why would they be taking down my review on Rotten Tomatoes? I mean, literally, it's been here. I'll do the edit and I'll post it again. And because of that, I've scored it a lower star rating on Rotten Tomatoes because they keep taking it down. I score it higher on Letterboxd and would be inclined towards scoring it even higher. But this website's lying. Okay? The websites are coming out and saying things like this is the highest grossing Superman for the opening weekend. Well, I beg to differ for you. Let me pull this up real quick. I'm going to refresh this. And you're not seeing what I'm saying, but let me go to not the Rotten Tomatoes. I just got rid of that. Okay, this is. Let's do this. It's not letting me do what I'm trying to do. So I will make it do what I'm trying to make it do. There we go. Superman, domestic. This is a revised number from the other day. $125 million. Domestic. Okay, worldwide, 220. They may try to change that at some point. These are estimates. They say Friday. They're including Thursday previews, and they're including the Tuesday preview that they did before that. Possibly previews before that. I don't know if they would try to include that or not. But the Prime Fandango pre-sales. And I'll tell you about that. I went to that. And I went to that. It's supposed to be sold out. The theater wasn't half full. Okay, where I went. Maybe where you went it was full. But I'm telling you, wasn't half full where I went. And then I went to the theater where I got my first ticket, early Thursday. Both of these were in 4DX 3D. Is the only showing available from the Fandango thing for the 8th. So it wasn't like you could look at something else. But I decided to get it first for that. Now, when we went to the theater and I checked it again, it was around half sold out the showing that I went to. About half sold out. The seats were all grayed out. That these seats were sold, and the seats were sold surrounding me and my son. We went to see it in that 40X, and so there were supposed to be people beside us, in front of us, lining up the rows, going all the way around us. For a long time, it was just the two of us that were there, and it was an early on Thursday showing. And so anyway, again, I went to this, um, and only half sold out, but then half of the people didn't show up. Half of the people didn't show up for the Superman movie in the theater. Yep, that's my experience in the theater. Now, even this though, and I don't believe this though, because they said that it was like $26 million was sold for the Tuesday special showings, or that was the early showings, and they might be including Tuesday and that. But a few weeks ago, they had said pre-sale tickets sold are 10 million. Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Pre-sale tickets, 10 million, which they're including the pre-sale tickets to the Prime show on Tuesday, which were all sold out around the country. After just a few hours, it broke down Fandango, and you couldn't get a ticket for hours and hours and hours. That was the reporting. So a few weeks ago, the reporting was there was $10 million in pre-sale tickets. And then all of a sudden, there's $26 million sold for the Prime showing, which I think is what the report I saw said was it was the Prime showing. But it might have been the 2 days. Might have included the Thursday. But anyway, 26 plus $1 million is leaving you with $30 million done on Friday. And usually Friday is the higher, uh, sales day for everybody, for all other movies that are out there. Um, and maybe a little bit added onto the Thursdays for some people that go ahead of time. But we're talking about nearly half is saying would have been sold before Friday. I mean, it's included in that number there. So inclusive to Sunday, uh, supposedly 125, a little bit more than 125 million. It's 125 million, 21,000, and so forth. Um, I don't know if you can see that or not. Yeah, you can. So that's there. Be that as it may, is that beating the Man of Steel box office? Man of Steel. Now it says here opening because back in the 2013 they didn't count pre-sales as their opening. So here's the pre-sale opening, $12 million. All right, so you got Thursday and Friday, and the Thursday pre-sale was a 7 o'clock showing, and I think there was a 10 o'clock showing as well. That was done through Walmart. So a little special thing. $12 million in pre-sales Thursday showings. I was at one of them, and it may have just been 7 o'clock showing. Okay, and a couple theaters in town had it, and I went to the one that one of the closest ones to me, and it may have only been that one. I'm not 100% sure about that. It was a long time ago. 2013 Thursday, and you got Friday. I put 44 million on Friday, add that 12 million to it. And Saturday, and then Sunday, total 128,681,000 is more than the Superman movie. So don't say, just don't lie about it. You can tell the truth and say it didn't make as much as Man of Steel. That's all you got to do. Just be honest with yourself, with others. Just tell the truth. That's all you got to do. That's all I'm asking is that people tell the truth. I hope that people can tell the truth. Um, it just that part of the reporting now bugs me. Be as hyped as you want to be, but stop and say, it's a little bit less than what Superman made as Man of Steel. That Superman made more money. Okay, but it has made more money than not Batman versus Superman, but um, the first Superman, from 1978, even adjusted for inflation, that it made more than the 1978 Superman. Okay, say that. Say it's made more than whatever movies have come out this year. Um, it it's not the top, gross selling. Uh, John Campea put out a list from 2022 to today. The top grossing opening weekend was Deadpool Wolverine, and then Superman is second to that. Yeah, okay, that's a number that you can throw out there, and say since 2022 you've done this. I don't know what happened in 2020. One that may have been more, uh, or 2020 or something like that. Are we getting back to maybe where um, is that Infinity War and Endgame, the Avengers movies? I'm not sure. I had to look up the numbers again. But anyway, my point was, don't lie, tell the truth, be honest, because otherwise I have to be critical about you and come back and say you're being dishonest and misleading, and you shouldn't be that way. I don't want to compare Superman to Man of Steel. They are completely different iterations of the character. This iteration of the character is not working for me. Maybe somebody else gets a hold of it and builds him to the character he's supposed to be and presents him in such a way that's interesting in the way he should be. As a character, there's multiple iterations, and I love most of them. This is the first Superman iteration that I have a dislike toward, and um, I don't. I It's more or less I don't mind the character representation so much of him as portrayed by the actor, but I dislike the movie and I dislike the presentation that's being done by James Gunn. Uh, for this character and for these people. I didn't even mention that Peacemaker makes an appearance and has a little uh, diatribe about being able to kill people because he's such a um, murderous individual. Like most of the others, I didn't even mention it about the others that are murderers so much either. But you know, Superman is the non-killer here. Um, take that for what you will, and it's a different subject. But seriously, that like I said, this is the first iteration that I can't say that I really enjoy, that I like, at least like. I, at least like. Now I'm not talking about necessarily a strange iteration. I haven't even seen some of the things that that exist out there. Um, for instance, Red Sun. I do need to watch Red Sun, um, and uh, and I haven't watched the version of All Star Superman. And I'm talking about um, cartoons in live action. There may be some comic book iterations that I've seen that I am averse to. I don't like the way that they may have been written. So I'm not accepting of all that stuff necessarily, but I can see where they're going with stuff usually, and be able to say it's okay. Do what you want to do. especially comic books. Comic books are going to be rewritten in a bunch of different ways. But I'm talking about Superman too, not every character involved with Superman as well. So, but yeah, live action and cartoons, generally speaking, I've enjoyed them all. I have an enjoyment with the Injustice version that goes on, even though I'm not super attracted to it. It wouldn't be the way I would go with it, but I can have fun with that storyline and enjoy playing the video games and things like that come with that. Okay, so I enjoy Superman until now. It's just like, why would that be? Why? Because there was so much potential, and ultimately, that's where it all falls apart for me. So much potential that was thrown away, and not even attempted. I feel like to be realized, just thrown away. Bad ideas, bad execution, just mm. and trying to borrow and trying to play on nostalgia and certain looks and feels that do normally appeal to comic book lovers and comic book character lovers, but you can't rely on just saying, well, we're going to throw this in here. You know, the kitchen sink is thrown in there somewhere, I'm sure. So we can't say all but. Uh, come on. Um, could have been so much better. Could have been so much better. And like I said, this first time that I'm truly, really disappointed in some version that is on a screen. And do not try to show me that Broadway musical farce of Superman. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something that was attempted to actually be done with some respect. Okay, and even that might be better than this, but I'm not arguing for it. Please. Have yourself some fun. Watch the movie as much as you want. I've watched it probably as much as I need to. I'll probably go see it again. And if they'll release a James Gunn director's cut, I will get that as well. And I will still probably buy this um, to have it in my collection on Blu-ray and or 4K, uh, you know, and be able to see it some other time. But hopefully they have commentaries and all kinds of extra features that I can really dive into behind the scenes stuff and and find some enjoyment where I have not found the enjoyment yet. Um, but yeah, that's best I'll be able to say for now, and we'll see you again in another video. I hope that you are blessed greatly if you watched to now or watched most of this even. The Lord bless you and keep you and help you in this life and walk with you. And we'll see you again in another video. Bye.